that's why we're, thank you, members, the viewing public and invited guests for your flexibility to allow us to move one day earlier. The roll will now be called to determine the presence of a quorum. Representative Butler, please call the roll.
Representative Chamberlain.
Here.
Representative Dinkin.
Present.
Representative Mozumbe.
Present.
Representative Wari. Representative Best. Representative Chang.
Present.
Representative Colson.
Present.
Representative Boulay. Representative Henderson.
Present.
Representative Johnson Law. Representative Thompson. Representative Chang.
Present.
Representative Paul. Representative Williams.
Present.
Representative Patch.
Present.
President, you have a plan.
Thank you so much, Director. I will now share our leadership report. We had two meetings, in the month of September with leaders. I'll start first and foremost, with our meeting with Chairman Mendelson. We started out very much so with the thank yous about the budget issues. That was first and foremost on our mind because we did want to make sure that we thanked him for the COLA, and some of the other things that were in the budget that he prioritized. We want to make sure that we thank them all of the community schools, things that had not been added by there, put in by the time of the budgets. So we started there. We also had a robust conversation around the authority legislation. At that particular time, we were thinking about moving it off the table. And so we discussed that there were a lot of questions, but then of course we did not end up tabling it at the time, but they did want to just know what was our thought process behind it, was our rationale, and we explained that. After that, we asked about teacher retention. There was going to be a hearing on that. And basically, he said he's looking in January to have a teacher retention hearing. So we discussed that time period. Then each one of our office leads went into their reports. Our director, he updated him on our move, all those things like that. He had a few questions, making sure we were good with the city. For our OMB, the biggest thing is that they had some vacancies that they report out on. And for OSA, just getting updates and some trends. One of the most troubling was the Ramada Kids Ride Free process. Just some of the nuances, and I'm still hearing it, just so you guys know. The nuances with schools getting all the parts that they need, particularly under the federalization that we have going on in the city. So there's a lot of concern around that if schools were not getting enough ride-free cards. From my understanding, that like each school got maybe 200 or so. When you got great big populations, like you look at Jackson Reed or another high school that need more, there's a problem. There's a huge problem. And so we kind of discussed those. As I look at the new student representatives, we introduced you guys, we talked about you guys as well. And you want to know where schools you guys came from, so we gave your names. We briefly talked about the federal issues that were still ongoing at that particular time. Some of the things have lessened since then, as far as some of the arrangements that we have with ICE and those things. But at that particular time, we talked about federal issues. He said there will be. We talked about K schools. He's not happy. Chairman was not overly happy. I know we talked about the growth that we have with efficiency, but he said we could do a lot more. We also wanted to know where to just aggregate information for schools that were low performing before. I know as a system we got better. There was a 4.4 growth in proficiency, but how does that break down into certain quantities of the city? So we kind of have to discussion around that. And that was the meeting with the chairman. We also had a meeting with the superintendent on 9/10/25. It revolved around 3 issues. Some of them will be coming up this evening. We talked about the graduation requirements, which we'll be having about this evening. So there's more detail to come. She gave a few like treats, so to speak, about issues, talk about, the diploma for special needs students and a way for them to make sure that they get a diploma and not a certificate of completion. So she kind of gave us a little teaser on that. She also gave us a teaser on, which I know the students will appreciate, graduation requirements for the work hours that you have to do, the community service that you need, that there will be changes there. So I'll let her do that information for you as she kind of about that a little bit. We talked a little bit about AI in schools as well. The issue came up again about from the college career and life readiness committee about our business about limitations. We discussed that again. For our two chairs that are here, we brought that issue up again that we want to visit schools. We want to go into the schools to see how some of the standards that have already been passed, how they're being implemented, how they're being effective, or if people get the support that they need to implement some of the standards that we've had over the last couple of years. We discussed that. And we also spoke with her about the expanded board authority. I think since Andrew is here as well, our superintendent expressed, that she is not in favor of those expanded authorities, but we know there's time to have more discussion at this particular time, as we have not tabled this. So that was basically a conversation with our state superintendent. Last thing I want to say in my report before closing is that, just like we're all watching the clock tonight, see what happens, we continue resolutions and budgets and stuff like that. For the local government, we are now about to start our own budget process. And one of the first things that we do is on this state board is we put together a letter and we submit that to kind of tell what our priorities is. So what I'm asking of our members and those, as you start to think about what will be our priorities and those things that we will push for, that will go into that letter that will be submitted to the fair. And I'll leave it there, and that's my closing. Are there any questions regarding the report? All right, thank you. I will now turn it to our executive director, Butler, for her report.
Thank you, President Patterson. Good evening, members of the DC State Board of Education. I would like to thank the entire SBOE team for stepping up during my medical leave in August and early September. Since the last working session, the team has successfully hosted the board's fall retreat, participating in the DCPS Back to School Block Party, and finalizing NASB National Association for State Boards of Education Conference registration and travel for student representatives and board members. The SBOE office construction is still on schedule. All construction permits have been submitted. You can wait for final approval this week. The timeline for it has moved back. As construction timelines due to mid-December with an anticipated January movement for staff. The SBOE team is excited about the year ahead and looks forward to support for research. That concludes my report.
Okay. Do anyone have any questions? Okay, well, along with that, I don't see a lot of questions today. All right, with that being said.
Only that was something that I can.
And I'm glad that you turned in. I will now turn over the next hour to our state superintendent, Dr. Mitchell, and I'll see for the presentation on reimagining high school graduation. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, President. I, want to apologize for being late. It's very difficult to get out of the building and, emergency come up when the federal government is about to shut down, so, my apologies there. I also apologize because two of my colleagues went to your old building, where I'm sure they're experiencing the construction. They will be joining us momentarily. And given the amount of work that we have put in, I would love to postpone my presentation for like 4 or 5 minutes until they arrive, if that will be okay.
Yes, ma'am, that is okay. We will hold for a minute, take a little break. We just go out forward.
Thank you very
For a
much.
few minutes, and allow individuals to get where.
Thank you very much.
We'll say it for right now, 5 minutes, and if we get it ended, we will.
Appreciate it.
We are back from our break, and we'll turn it back over again to Dr. Mendoza.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the generous break. We are here. We are terribly excited to share with you the culmination of 2.5 years of community outreach, research, and additional work. To put a capstone on our initiative entitled Reimagining High School Graduation Requirements. As you know, we created the graduate profile with lots of community input. And then we use that profile as a North Star to think about how can we do something different? We know that the graduation requirements are very, very rigorous, very strong. Didn't want to in any way dilute the strength of the graduation requirements. At the same time, recognizing that times have changed, the environment has changed in which our kids are learning. And so we wanted to update the graduation requirements in a way that would honor the change in environment that we are in. We came to you earlier in this process and shared with you a draft, and today we will share with you the proposed revisions. And we're really excited about the work and where we're going as a system as we think about making changes to the graduation requirements. My colleague and comrade, Dr. Shamir Jones, has been working with me for the last 2.5 years to get this work done. More recently, we began working with our colleagues in special education, Victoria Glick and Christy Harris-Weaver. We are now going to present to you the proposed graduation requirements, and we're looking forward to a very robust conversation. Dr. Jones.
So, good evening, everyone. We can move to the next slide, please. So during today's discussion, we're going to provide a recap of how we got here. So we're going to focus on the vision for the work, the guiding questions for the work, and how we're rooted within the contemporary educational ecosystem for this project. And then we're going to turn it over to Dr. Mitchell, and she's going to walk through the proposed graduation requirements. We'll then move into the practical studies diploma discussion, and I'll pass it over to Christy Weaver Harris. And then Dr. Mitchell will provide a conclusion and next steps, and then we'll open the floor for questions. There's two main objectives for today's discussion. One is to provide the proposal for the graduation requirements and also share with you all why and how it is that we got here. We can move to the next slide. As Dr. Mitchell shared, we started this work now 2.5 years ago. And so in framing this work, there were 4 guiding questions that led this work. And as we move throughout tonight's discussion, we will focus on how each one of these components is embedded within the proposal. So the first question that we pondered was, should DC differentiate amongst high school diplomas? The second was, should there be specific core credit requirement changes to make room for student choice? The third was, should there be any new required courses? And the fourth was, should we include a new project-based capstone requirement? Next slide, please. So in addition to those 4 guiding questions, I've rooted our vision for this work in 2 key areas: career readiness and post-secondary success for all students, so that DC high school graduates could be better prepared for their post-secondary journeys, whether that be moving into formal higher education or if they choose to go into the world of work, ultimately so that they can have sustaining careers. And in centering this work on that vision, it led to the development of the DC graduate profile. As the superintendent shared, that is the North Star for the skill sets that we believe students should be able to attain by the time they graduate. So that's the interpersonal, academic, and career readiness characteristics. And we presented this to you before, so it's those 7 key characteristics that guide the profile, along with the competencies, which are demonstrable performance-based outcomes that learners can meet. We also took a step back, right? And we had to reevaluate what the status quo was surrounding this work. As we reimagined the graduations requirements, we landed at these key areas. One, having a standard diploma with multiple endorsement options. So that's career technical education, that's advanced coursework, that's also the individualized coursework option and the skill of applied literacy. We also embrace post-secondary planning and experiential learning within this work. So the proposal to increase the current post-secondary plan touch points from 1 to 3 at a minimum at the 9th grade, the 11th grade, and the 12th grade. And then also focusing on experiential learning, and you'll see that in the elective options, both in the standard diploma and in the practical studies diploma. We have those stuff.
Still online.
Okay,
Just
all right. I can move forward then. We also reassess which academic units ensure eligibility and success for students as they move into their post-secondary careers. So that looking at areas like the recommendation for the financial literacy course and the career preparation course. We also explored course flexibility and substitutions and the addition of the practical studies diploma. I don't know if you all are able to advance this slide for the folks online.
Yes, right. Oh, that's like why I have to stop.
Okay. Great. So, moving from the vision of the work, we absolutely felt like it was critical to examine the contemporary educational landscape as we explored, proposed changes to the graduation requirements. We are in an ever-changing society, and academics and education is also moving rapidly. A lot of what we propose came directly from the research that we did, both from a district landscape, also national landscape, and from the engagement activities that we participated in. And from that research, we saw that there was a focus on individualized core academic knowledge. So what does that look like as far as leveraging student choice? Also, while having that be the framework, relying on the importance of teamwork within the educational system and in the classroom. And then we've also heard from a lot of the engagement activities and research that there was a desire for more real world learning and project-based education. And you can see that within the graduate profile. And so we leveraged that there. And then also, we got a lot of feedback about the importance of character development as well as soft skills and academic and career preparation. And so we've included that within the proposal, not only in the graduate profile, but also in recommendations for new courses like the career preparation. Next slide, please. Okay. So as I shared, in order to get to the current proposal, you all are aware that we engaged in a host of qualitative related selection activities, both from local stakeholders as well as national experts, and we also met with other state education agencies. We netted out at a little bit more than 40 tailored engagement sessions, inclusive of 2 public engagement sessions, an educator session, as well as disseminating 2 public surveys, and we also queried our high school administrators for their feedback. I will turn the floor over back to Superintendent.
Thank you very much. And so, based on all of the engagement and research that Dr. Jones just indicated, we come to our requirements. And our requirements are basically in 3 big categories. One is post-secondary planning and the capstone. The second big requirement is the 4 endorsement options that we're going to propose. And then the third set of requirements is around core foundational knowledge. And in addition to that, we are delighted to also share with you our best thinking around a practical studies diploma for students with disabilities. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in terms of the post-secondary plan, we are amending the current requirements around the plan to require that students have 3 touch points in terms of their planning throughout their high school career. We think that these touch points are very important because they will focus the students, they will ensure that the students are taking courses that they are interested in and that will lead to a diploma and post-secondary activities that they have indicated is where they want to go. I think also that this will lower psychological, emotional distress, and also lower academic distress because people will know where they're going, they know their plan, they know the courses that they have to take. And for all of those reasons, we think that touch point is important. In addition to that, we are recommending that all students be required to complete a capstone. And this capstone project will be a requirement, will be a new requirement, and students will be asked to demonstrate competency through project-based work connected in some way to the DC student profile. Here, we think that this will have an impact across the whole system because it is our hope that more project-based learning will happen as we diversify the graduate profile and make it relevant for different grade bands. We would hope that much more project-based learning will take place as a result. We also know that if a student is given the opportunity to dive deeply into a particular topic, that student is much more engaged in the work, but more connected to the work, and hopefully connected to an individual in the school who's helping that student work through that project. It will take a lot of work on the part of LEAs, but we do believe that it is a shift that is important, not only for student interest, but also for our students' ability to integrate their foundational knowledge along with the other characteristics in our graduate profile. So the next recommendation has to do with the 4 endorsement options. And here again, we want to give students the opportunity to focus their studies in a particular way, a particular endorsement, and then receive credit for having done that. And so we have these options related to career and technical education, related to, career and technical education, the advanced coursework endorsement, which will be if the student takes courses in AP or dual enrollment. We have an individualized endorsement in which the student could create from the courses offered in his or her high school certain courses to earn at least a 3.0 and achieve individualized endorsement. And then we have the seal of biliteracy. So here in DC especially, we have so many embassies, so many languages for students who already have a language, for students who want to pursue language studies. This seal would acknowledge the work that they do to earn what is really a national seal that would suggest that they have competency in more than 2 languages. Rationality was pretty good. And then finally, the community service. It is our proposal that we, broaden our community service requirement by talking about community engagement. And also at the same time, lower the number of hours that are required. Through our discussions with, students and counselors, people really believe that it will be possible for students to gain the knowledge and skills that we want them to learn in a shorter amount of time. We also think that it's important that students be able to be compensated in some way for some of the work that they do in this area. The proposal includes the notion that OSSE would work with school counselors and other leaders to better define what we mean by engagement. And also the criteria by which they could decide whether or not a particular engagement was sufficient to meet this particular high school requirement. The next big bucket of recommendations is around, next slide, please. Yes, yeah. So the core content, we had lots and lots of discussions here. And this is where we have landed. We think that we should maintain the 4 years of math requirements. However, we are suggesting that we broaden the Algebra 2 requirement to be inclusive of an integrated mathematics course or course sequence. We also think that we should reduce the science requirement from 4 units to 3 units. Here we think we should include 2 labs. One has to be biology, the other could be chemistry or environmental science, or anything else. And those 2 changes to the 4 cores are really significant because we want to ensure that a student going through high school has some choice. A student going through high school can make decisions about where they think they want to be post high school. And if a student is not necessarily interested in a STEM career, then maybe Algebra 2 is not what they want to take. It could be a course in statistics, or it could be data science, and all these different areas in mathematics that could really turn a child on to mathematics in ways that perhaps Algebra 2 won't. Similarly, we looked at science requirements across the country. Very few states require 4 years of science. We also looked at colleges, and we found that most colleges don't require 4 years of science either. In physical education, we are simply, physical education and health education, we are simply clarifying that we mean 1 year of physical education and 1 semester of health, and we want to call out health education. You know that we have adopted financial literacy standards, and we think and heard very clearly across our engagement that financial literacy should be a high school requirement and not just an option. So that is a 1 semester course. Similarly, career preparation course will be helpful based on all of the research that we did. And that course would be a course where we would provide some foundational information, not only around career options, but also one of the things that we know is that technology is constantly changing and changing the world. And so this will be an opportunity for us to ensure that our children have a foundation in IT, things like, how do you ask AI bot for information? So we want to make sure that our students have access to a career course that builds in IT information technology and knowledge of the changing world. There, and then, so those are the 4 course recommendations that we're making in this proposal. And then finally, there is a practical studies diploma. And I've wanted reinforcement to help us talk about that diploma.
So the rationale behind the practical studies diploma is to provide an opportunity for students with disabilities to have a pathway to success. It's to not to shift students from the standard diploma to this diploma. If a student can obtain a standard diploma, they should be on a standard diploma track. This is to create opportunity for the gap that we have identified, where there is this specific population of students for whom the diploma is not attainable, but the certificate of IEP completion is not rigorous enough and does not set them up for success. They can't take that certificate and use it to obtain employment or to participate in continuing education. So the idea behind that is that we would identify student characteristics and work with IEP teams to best make decisions about what diploma tracks students should be doing. And the rationale again is to address this gap in meaningful expertise. And I'll talk more in detail on the next couple of slides, please. So again, our goal here is to create a pathway to opportunity for students with disabilities who can't meet the requirements for the standard diploma, but for whom an IEP certificate of completion is not sufficiently rigorous. The diploma would be appropriate for students who, due to their disability, participate in a heavily modified curriculum. They face significant barriers in the traditional learning environment. These students often have mild to moderate impacts on their academic and life functioning and cognitive functioning. And their post-secondary goals contemplate employment or job training or continued education. Their post-secondary goals do not contemplate obtaining a 4-year degree from a 4-year. And again, IEP teams would determine the appropriate credential for students or all students with IEPs, using guidance developed by OSSE through a collaborative process. And I say that because we've seen so much success in the stakeholder engagement process for the larger reimagining of high school graduation requirements. And when we reached out to our stakeholders around this, there was a lot of interest in the how. How are these decisions going to be made? What supports are going to be given to IEP teams? What communication is going to happen with families? And we very firmly believe that it's really important to keep our folks engaged in these conversations and leading these conversations so that the guidance that is available for IEP teams, for parents, families, and students is really informed by the actual experience. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the two primary components of the proposed diploma include modified course requirements and then an occupational or job focused component. So first, with modified course requirements, you may think of these as course substitutions, but I don't like to use the phrase substitution for this because it's not a one-to-one substitution of what the core requirements are for a standard diploma. These are different courses that are teaching different things to these students. We would retain the same 24 total credits, but we would eliminate the world language credit in favor of additional elective pathways. And students, again, would be accessing different courses within each core area that would be selected by the IEP team that are consistent with their post-secondary goals and that emphasize application-based courses, functional courses, hands-on learning, and life skills readiness courses. Again, all this would be determined by the student's IEP team using state level guidance. And it's also important to note that the student's IEP team includes the student and the parent. So this is a comprehensive decision that's being made collaboratively within the context of IDEA requirements, and that parents would be heavily engaged into. For the occupational component, the elective would support the students in obtaining the knowledge and skills necessary to meet their post-secondary goals that they would be defining again through that IEP. Again, an emphasis on application-based and life skills courses, and within the electives, students would be required to take one course, one elective credit, of experiential or hands-on learning. Some of the examples that we talk about here are internships, employment, job shadowing, and like apprenticeships, and that's kind of a broad range of experiences, but we want this to be broad and to provide an opportunity or an environment for all of the students who could be participating in this. Well, we would see a wide range of abilities here. We want to make sure that there's opportunities for everyone to be able to engage in an appropriate hands-on activity. And again, a goal here is to increase access for students with disabilities to CTE programming that is aligned and mirrors their pre-employment or their transition goals that are established through the IEP process. Next slide, please. I want to highlight some alignments with the standard diploma. So these reference back to the 3 sets of requirements that Dr. Mitchell was speaking about earlier. Within the post-secondary plan, we would propose having annual touch points, which is consistent with the requirement for an annual review of the student's IEP. And that is compared to for the standard diploma, they require 3 touch points. The capstone project would be a little bit broader in the sorts of competency-based education and be engaging in. So it could be a project portfolio or experience-based learning opportunity. So again, just broadening the ways that students could participate in that. And then within the endorsements, we heard fairly and consistently in our stakeholder engagement that we want folks to have the same access to the endorsement options. Plus an added opportunity for students to obtain a CTE endorsement by completing a micro-credential. So that would be a cohesive component of the larger course of study that we identified for the formal CTE program. So instead of completing 3 or 4 courses within the CTE requirement, the student would be able to complete 2 courses or 3 courses that would be defined by our CTE folks. To ensure that it's a cohesive component that's teaching a concept that is consistent with the larger CTE. And again, students would be able to participate in APIB dual enrollment, endorsement, the individualized option, and the sealed applied C. Next slide, please. So this shows a comparison between the current IEP certificate of completion, the proposed graduation requirements, and then the proposed practical studies. As you can see on the left, the IEP certificate of completion has a really low requirement for for credit totals, a total of 14 credits, with 2 credits each of English, math, science, and social studies. So that sets a pretty low bar, and we've heard from the field that it is not rigorous enough, it's not sufficient for students to be able to take this credential and move into post-secondary. And you can see on the far right how things compare with this proposal for the standard diploma. So in selecting modified courses for these students, we would emphasize functional, applied, and concepts courses, including integrated math and mathematics. For science, students would be able to participate in non-lab sciences, social sciences, or computer science to get their science credits. For social studies, we retain the requirement for DC history, but otherwise students would have the flexibility in selecting, IEP teams in selecting the courses that would meet history requirements. For world language, we would eliminate the world language requirement and instead add additional credits to the electives. Students could still elect to participate in complete world language courses as part of their electives. We retain the same art credits for music. We'll be modifying courses for students with hearing impairments or deafness. And then for PE, we would also include adapted PE courses. Here I want to recognize that some LEAs don't have a specific course that is called adapted PE. Many LEAs provide PE, and adapted PE is part of the regular PE course. So you may hear from the LEA folks that do we have to create a course to meet this requirement? And the answer is no, you're already doing it. Sorry, something that exists. And in making these requirements around what sorts of course modifications LEAs could use, we did look at OSCE's course collection data to make sure that these sorts of courses already exist in the field, and they do. We know that there's already an existing foundation across many LEAs, not all, but many LEAs. And we would be leveraging the knowledge base of those LEAs and assisting other LEAs in creating these kinds of curriculums. So 5.5 credits for electives, including 1 credit of experiential learning, which I spoke about earlier, and the community engagement requirement would remain the same at 60 hours.
And that is our proposal. I just want to say that we know that students with disabilities are our most vulnerable students. We also know that students with disabilities are not monolithic, right? Kids have different ability levels. And I believe that this proposal really does embrace the full continuum of students. We have those students who are able to achieve a full diploma, a standard diploma, sometimes with modifications, but they're still going for that standard diploma. We have some students that the certificate is the right level for their abilities, and we want to hold on to that certificate. We also know that there is a group of students in the middle who experience very high dropout rates because we haven't been able to serve them well. And I believe that this practical studies diploma is our attempt to serve that body of students in a way that honors what they are able to do and holds fast to graduation requirements as well. So now I'll talk about next steps. The list of next steps is here. I think fall of 25 is when we agreed to so this graduation task force will conduct public engagement on OSSI's proposed graduation requirements, and that's fall of 25. Once you finish that, OSSI's going to support the task force work. We've named Dr. Jones to sit on your task force and work through with you over the course of the fall. OSSI is going to convene national experts to plan for the integrated math coursework implementation. We want to understand exactly what needs to be done in order to build out an integrated math integrated math program of study. We want to get expertise from experts in the nation and help us move our math instruction the way that many states in the nation are moving. So we'll be doing that. In February of 26, that's when you are scheduled to provide us with your comprehensive feedback on these graduation proposals. During March and April, we will then submit back to you our final graduation requirements proposal for your vote. And then post-approval is where the work really begins because we'll start to roll out implementation of these new requirements, which will go into effect for the 9th grade class 27-28. So you see that we have plenty of time before we get to the 12th grade requirement for a capstone, but we're like moving in a really positive direction across the board. That is our projected next steps. Those are our projected next steps. And then just in conclusion, I would love to just emphasize the fact that we are thinking long-term with these requirements. We know that the graduate profile and these requirements will create a clearer pathway for post-secondary learning. And the diploma options will help drive student interest and ensure that our students are coming along with us. Creating a new pathway to post-secondary success for students with disabilities is so important. It may be the biggest, most important thing that we do in this effort. The financial literacy course is what we've heard over and over again from your constituents. The career course, very critical because we know AI is changing the world right now. And through increasing our access to post-secondary planning, career preparation, employment opportunities, and project-based learning, we are preparing our kids for a productive future. And so I just encourage you to think, I hope that you will enjoy the process as much as we did, and think about the importance of preparing our kids for a world that's rapidly changing. We need them to be flexible in their thinking and abilities, and I believe this is the way that we get there.
All right. If you're ready for questions and answers, let's start recognizing members who may have questions.
I have a question, President Patterson.
Right ahead, sir.
Thank you to the OSSI team. Mine is a macro level one. I'm curious for the team, what was the hardest decision to make in this process? What were some of the pieces of feedback that you got that were kind of most not on the same page?
What a great question. Thank you very much. I'll start, and then Shamir, you feel free to jump in. I think, once we did all of the research and looked at what other states were requiring for a standard high school diploma, we suggested additional changes to the core requirements. We began thinking that perhaps, we could only do 3 years of social studies and not 4. We heard very loudly that that wasn't such a good idea. I think we thought originally that maybe math could jump down to 3 credits instead of 4. Once again, we heard loudly that that wasn't a good idea. I think that the science remained, but just grappling with, what I think what has been a question in education for a long time, and that is, are we preparing everybody for college? Or do we want to truly prepare people for college and career by providing alternatives that would enable folks maybe not to go to a 4-year liberal arts college, but maybe go to a community college, or to get a certificate and go directly into the workforce, or maybe do both, right? And so there was that tension that we felt as we discussed the core requirements. I think that that was, yeah, we did a lot of learning there, and we also, made changes based on that learning.
The other thing that I would add onto that is just distilling into the key areas for the endorsement category. So thinking about areas that students are currently participating in, but may not be getting recognition other than just it being noted as a credit. And in some areas, not a group of courses being recognized as a credit, but thinking about ways in which those areas students could have transcripted so that colleges and universities could be over there. Or if they go off into the world of work and it's an apprenticeship, so that when they provide the transcript, they could say, hey, you participated in the CTE cluster, but distilling into which areas that could help the accolades of students shine brightest. That was an area that I think we had to just pause and give a lot of reflection upon, but we landed at the right the listing, since students are actively and consistently taking the enrollment and AP courses, including those, calling out the CTE clusters, and also thinking about how they're being pushed in that area. Also, the nod to students that have a passion in a certain focal area like literature, and having that be a part of that individualized course option, and also thinking about our native language population and how we could have this seal of literacy and that service recognition. So that was an area that was not a challenge. It was just really thinking about those category areas that students may be taking right now and helping to leverage and shine light on those. So.
Thank you so much. The second part of my question too, I know you did a lot of engagement, and curious where you heard the most the widest range of feedback.
Where we heard the widest range of feedback. Gosh, that's a tough question, because every constituent group had a particular area, okay? So, the school counselors were really big on the, community service. Do we need that many hours? And students too. The LEAs, really, a lot of push and pull around competency-based education. What is good for students versus what is good for teachers, came up some. When we talk to community members, Many of the parents, really liked the idea of the endorsements. We got lots of affirmation there. But I will tell you, it wasn't toward the end, it wasn't until toward the end when we began discussing the practical studies diploma that we just got an overwhelming, response, very positive. People said, oh, we've wanted to do this for years. We have been, thinking about this population, for a very long time. You look at the dropout rates, it is like off the chart. And so I would say we got a great deal of engagement around that particular area.
I will
Thank
say
you.
that the most surprising part of the engagement that we conducted specific to students with disabilities was how much agreement there was between LEAs, advocates and families about the flexibilities that they wanted the students to engage in and that they wanted for themselves to be able to make decisions to meet student needs. Folks were really aligned across sectors, both on the what we were proposing around the practical studies diploma, that they really wanted to engage in conversation about how are we gonna get it done. So that's part of the reason why we also proposed continuing that level of engagement. People are very, very invested in making sure that it's done right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So a couple questions, and I think some of them are pretty short, but with the career preparation course, do you anticipate developing standards around that? And towards the end, you were talking about that as a space where there's some tech education could take place, and so I'm just wondering how prescriptive policy might be on that, or if it's just going to be left to the LEAs to determine that. Another question about the capstone, and how is that going to relate to credits and courses? So in terms of time, both for students and for teachers, like where do you envision that work taking place? Is it going to take place through the regular coursework? Is it something that's going to need like additional time? Is it going to be something that's going to feed into an elective or become an elective? Just generally, how does that relate to credit hours? And then finally, about course substitution, flexibility, we talked about that a fair amount along the way. And I'm not sure where that is showing up from what you presented, and maybe the answer is that it doesn't show up here, it shows up in the processes, policies for course substitution elsewhere. But could you speak to that?
Sure, gladly. In terms of the career education course, I think that it might be something that evolves into standards. But initially, while we are developing the course, testing the course out, I think that we would provide guidance. And with the idea that it might develop into standards in a few years. So that is the thinking on that course right now. In terms of the capstone, I think the capstone can be connected to a end of the year, end of a course project. So it does not have to be individualized or standalone. And so it could be a part of a course, that's what I am thinking right now. But again, we will work with LEAs to develop guidance around that. And then in terms of the course substitution, yes, there is already a document that really outlines course substitutions for career and technical education. And we would just write more guidance to be clear about what LEAs should think about as they make these course substitutions, which is the authorization which they already have.
There's also the language piece there that is highlighted with sort of the asterisks there where if you're demonstrating competency in language, that should.
Good, Council, you can question.
A couple. First of all, I just want to say thank you. I know this is a lot, I know it took a lot. I know you all actually kind of went back and tried to rethought about what it was gonna look like and how we really serve this population. And so I know everybody in this room is really trying to figure out, how do we get it right? And how do we give how do we give our kids the best opportunity to be successful? Still gonna push back.
Okay.
A couple things. On page 20 of the of all the recommendations together, it says, like you all said, the practical studies diploma would not be appropriate for students for whom a standard diploma is achievable, even if they require accommodations, modifications, and supports to do so. Because the practical studies diploma may not be accepted by institutions of higher education, students who, and again, that could be community college, it just says higher education, so I'm assuming, does that mean community college and just higher institution of higher education? Students who plan to enroll in a 4-year higher education program, again, should pursue a standard diploma. So one, I feel like that's already kind of in a deficit, where we're already saying they're already less than. And I feel like you all have actually created a really great recommendation for requirements. It's the same, it's you're saying 24 credits here, 24 credits there. But it still can't be a track for them to be able to get a diploma, to be afforded the opportunity to go to a 4-year institution. And we don't know what type of implications that will have on their job and how schools will implement this out. So are we just putting them in some middle ground because we're not exactly sure how to implement it, right? And then you all say, on page 19, LEAs will confer the practical studies diploma as they are best suited to review and confirm student transcripts, satisfactory completion of appropriate coursework to meet requirements. The diploma is not appropriate to be structured as a state diploma because OSSE lacks the capacity, subject matter expertise, and access to student information necessary to determine if each student completed the necessary coursework. Can you all explain that? Because I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm gonna start with the last question. Is that
Okay.
About LEAs will confer this. We had initially thought about this diploma option being something that OSSE confers as a state level diploma, similar to how we confer the GED diploma, which is a state level.
Mhm.
And what we're saying there is LEAs are best suited to know whether a student completed this course, making the decisions at the LEA level, and also ensuring that students with disabilities within an LEA are getting a piece of paper from the LEA. They're participating in that graduation opportunity and that activity within their LEA.
How is that different from the certificate?
The diploma that they would be conferring has greater meaning and greater standards behind it. And I hear you on the first part of your question of like, how do we know how are we going to make this meaningful in the community? And a lot of that will come in the implementation phase, which includes working with our local institutions of higher education, both at UDC and in surrounding counties, to make sure that what we are structuring out in terms of course substitutions and guidance that we're providing to IEP teams on how to do that is going to meet what those entities expect to see. So we say there, it may not be accepted by institutions of higher education because we don't have confirmed buy-in from institutions of higher education to say, we absolutely would accept this. The goal is certainly that they would. And again, our implementation work is working with them to make sure that.
I think the added piece there also is that our surrounding jurisdictions accept diplomas of the kind that we are talking about here, under different names in those institutions. And so we're working to align to what we know those institutions are already accepting from surrounding jurisdictions, so that our students in the district who are receiving this in between are equivalent to their peers coming out of the surrounding counties and matriculating into community college, the post-secondary programming. even if the diploma is not structured for a four-year institution, but we absolutely recognize that there are equivalencies across the surrounding jurisdictions. We want to match those so that our students are competitive to those.
So it's like stamp of approval from LEA, but we're not saying that OSSI can basically give its like stamp of approval,
Can I,
which means we're not recognized by the state.
No.
No, the state wouldn't be giving the student a diploma.
Oh,
Yeah.
This is a diploma and LEA's confer diplomas. Having the state deliver it would other it.
got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Representative, if I may, because I just want to interject, because you made what you're talking about. I just want to say, right. When the standards are the standards, like I go to Rainbow, graduation every year, you know what the standards are. They're the burden, they're, so to speak, even though the LEA may be giving them, the standards are the standard. I have a problem with LEA's meeting that position. I just do. I think we all mean well, but then it becomes under suspicion, or the LEA is really doing getting to that level. Are they really graduating children the way they should? Are they getting the lesson plans? Are they meeting the requirement? When we hold that requirement as OSCE and the State Board of Education, I feel very confident knowing that everybody has met standards up to graduate. I would like to say I trust every LEA, but I just can't. So I have a problem with giving that authority over to an LEA who at some particular time, I'm just gonna say this out loud, may need to improve their graduation or whatever the case is. And so they may say a student hasn't met that. It's me. I wanted to say that.
This in some ways is a throwback to when we came before this body with the state diploma. There's a lot of discussion around how we do that. But my wondering is LEAs take the standards that OSCE creates and make decisions about standard diplomas, right? And this would be the same thing. LEA, that the IEP team would make the decision about which diploma a student will pursue. And one of the things that's important here is that nothing is rigid. Nothing says that once you start on one diploma, you can't change. Once you begin, wherever you begin, there's always the opportunity to move between diplomas. But LEAs are the entity that makes those decisions for the standard diploma as well, so this would be the same and not different. Actually, because OSCE is one step removed from the student, from the coursework, from the grading, we would be the ones like not knowing what the student has achieved. The LEA was.
I also think it appropriately positions OSCE and State Board in an oversight capacity. And we have seen OSCE serve in that role in instances where historically the standard diploma requirements were not appropriately applied in a systemic nature. And OSCE has been appropriately positioned in that framework to step in, oversee, ensure systemic reform at the LEA level when that happens. And so this would maintain that framework to ensure we have, as a city, the right oversight.
Still, the
Strategy.
issue is, the issue of the diploma is not so much, is the LEA.
But
I just want, so that currently do that for all. LEA to that for all, not just this.
But this is still a little concerning because, and Dr. Mitchell, you're right, they should be able to kind of like to go between. But in real time, they're not. They're kind of just, this is too hard to do. It's too many modifications. It's too many accommodations. You need an aide, an instructional aide, there's so much happening here. And so a lot of times they switch them. Now, the DCMR states that you're really not supposed to make those decisions until ninth grade. That's what the DCMR states. But a lot of times the LEAs are actually doing that before. Because it's harder. And then with this, and with this other option, if they're already struggling, will this make it harder for them? Instead of us just taking this really great proposed revision and just making it a track to a diploma. If Delaware, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, and Pennsylvania can literally give a child a diploma for IEP completion that is individualized. So we don't know what's on that child's IEP. The LEA, the parent knows what's on that IEP. It's individualized, but they still have the opportunity to get one. So my question is, why can't we do that here?
Well, I guess that would beg the question, what is a diploma? And what are the requirements for a diploma? Because if someone who completes what's necessary for a certificate gets a diploma, then what value does that give, the diploma for, say, an employer who would look at a student who meets all of the requirements on the other side for a standard diploma? There's not a lot of distinction there, and maybe there should be some distinction, right? Because the students will always have the opportunity to earn a standard diploma.
Right,
Right, they have
they have that option, right?
but we know that we are losing hundreds of students every year because they can't quite make all of those requirements. The
Right.
science requirements, 3 years of science, 4 years of social studies, learning about ancient Mesopotamia in the ninth grade. That's not gonna. A lot of students, we're gonna lose a lot of students if we continue down this path, requiring all of the requirements that we have for the standard diploma for students that are gonna struggle. And so if we create this option, then the students won't have to struggle quite as much. Because they can find their fit, they can find their lane in a way that honors what they are able to do, much more than saying it's either this all the way up here or a certificate. I don't know that honors what a student is able to do.
I'm just gonna push back just one more time. President Johnson, I promise I'm gonna be quiet after this.
Okay.
When I look at Ward 8
Mhm.
and I look at the scores,
Mhm.
and I'm looking at K, I'm looking at English and I'm looking at math.
Mhm.
Many of our students are graduating, but the proficiency rates are still low. But they still have a diploma.
Mhm.
And if we are the state board and you all are OSSI and we are, I guess, representations of the state,
Mhm.
we're not trying to water down the diploma. That's not what we're doing. It's another track to be able to get there. It's just another route. It's just another way for students who may not be able to take, like you just said with the example in ninth grade. So maybe you use this example here, which let's just say OSSI and the SBO, we all approve these recommendations, right? Where they have the English and that you created with the 24, right? Like this part here.
Mhm.
And we're saying, hey, like we have recognized, because we don't want to hold a child's disability against them, because that's kind of like what's happening. And people don't want to say that out loud, but that is what's happening. So if we approve this and say, hey, they're able to do this, right? Your English, your math, the lab sciences, you're talking about biology, the social studies, and the different things that we have here. It's just a different track. I don't think it waters down the high school, the standard DC diploma. I think it creates another inclusive way to be able to get there for somebody who may not be able to do option A.
You might have to just.
That's fine.
Representative. I can go after Representative Thompson.
I'm gonna admit some confusion here because so I I have river terrors. I have no apologies about that. I'm really proud of the fact, that river terrors is in Ward 7. And every single one of those students graduates with a certificate of completion. Some of them also then take the additional step, to do project search. Because that's also housed within river terrors. And one of the things I have a lot of, just quite frankly reverence for Dr. Cepeda. It's just like how much work she puts in to make sure her students are on pathways where they can have a future, like a real future. And I want to make sure that I'm understanding, because the way I understand this is like, this is for those babies. This is for my babies that were tears. Who most of them are not going to a four-year institution. They have the most severe disabilities out of everybody. And right now, they're getting a certificate and they can't even go like stop boxes at CVS. And so I read this and I do think we should have more discussion about who should have just the different individualized options. Because I think our goal should be for as many students as possible to be on the standard diploma track. That's gonna be pretty much everybody should be our goal. And that standard diploma track should be a rigorous, respected, and meaningful one. I interpret, and I just wanna make sure I'm understanding, this practical studies diploma as a full diploma. And it will be reflected as a diploma. But similar to the GED, where you maybe do not meet all the same requirements, because it's a general purpose, right? Like it's a GED, you can just say GED. But also, not every university accepts the GED, right? That doesn't mean you didn't get a diploma. And so when I hear what you're talking about, Ms. Glick, where you're like, we have to do a certain amount of engagement and education, since this is a new thing. Because most of these students are not gonna go to, Wisconsin and go to school, or California to go to school. They're gonna stay close to their families. And so this puts them in a position where they could get a diploma. And then we would also have a certain responsibility to do the work to say, hey, UBC, this is what this means. Hey, University of Maryland, this is what this means. Hey, PG Nova Community College, this is what this means. And like, this is a real thing. And our students are prepared for this too, because it's new to them. Not because it's lesser. And I just want to articulate that as an understanding, and see where or if there are any gaps between that. With the recognition that I tend to be a how person, I love a good idea. But I also, it doesn't mean anything if it's on the books and nobody benefits from it, right? So I just want to make sure I understand the idea. So then as we transition into our engagement, we're able to articulate the idea, give responses to that, and then also get good input around that. And what we might be missing. And so I just wanted to say that out loud, to get your thoughts to see if that, where the daylight is. If any.
I think you have articulated exactly where we want to go. I defer to the team though, but as far as, I'm concerned, what you just said very much captures the idea, of why we want to do this.
Yes, exactly. What you just said is exactly what our intentions are. Exactly what we see as the challenges and exactly what we see as the work ahead in making sure that we're getting buy-in appropriately. Project Search was an exemplar in the initial iterations and the initial research that we did around this, and it's always been at the forefront of our thoughts. One of the questions that, when my team was looking at what we were bringing up was, are the students who are participating in Project Search at River Terrace going to be able to get this? That has been a guiding question for us. So yes, yes.
That's really helpful to me. I look forward to having, more conversations, you know, this is, so we can kind of like understand, because I mean, there is a huge spectrum of experiences, abilities, you know, accommodations that need to be made. And we are trying to essentially say, what are the big tracks that folks can be on? And so we need those to be as meaningful as possible and as clear as possible. And so that people, you know, can end up on the right places, like as they see their own futures, you know? So that's helpful to me. I think I have two questions about the one is just the individual endorsement, and like, if you could just give me a little bit of something like how we talked about like Project Search and River Service, that's who you have in mind for the new practical studies diploma. Is there a portrait of a graduate that you have in mind for someone who this individualized certification will be for? And can you all talk about that? Okay.
Sure, I can start, maybe sure you can chime in. So, the individualized option, was created because we thought that a student might have a particular interest. Say a student might be interested in, policing, right? That student might take a history course, that talks about, slavery and beginning of the police. They might then take another course that is a social justice course in their school. They might take an AP course that is from a criminology program. So the idea was to give students the leeway to work with a school sponsor to identify a set of courses that would fulfill an interest that they have, and then bring it together in a way that is cohesive. And so, one of the important things that we did with our practical studies diploma was to be inclusive of the endorsement options in that diploma. So that students that were interested in taking that particular pathway could do it that way. It's just another option available for students to pursue their interests in a meaningful way and then receive some type of acknowledgement that they did that.
Okay, I really appreciate that. I think it's also helpful, that is something that is across the diploma tracks. That's gonna be a follow-up question on that. And then I would just say one thing to, like, it doesn't need to be fully, and that I'm not expecting a fully answer here, but I think it's, something that, we should be, I want a better understanding of the different, CTE offerings across the district, everything from like, the ATC to like, the different tracks that Austin has within schools to,
Yeah.
you know, the cadet academy, all the different things, infrastructure academy, like how we are making sure students can take advantage of those opportunities in a way that fits with the diploma tracks. Like, where there are places where, we're making a lot of exceptions and maybe it should become the rule. Like those kinds of things, because it is, I still have a good number of constituents who believe that we don't have CTE and vocational education currently, and they say that to me. And then I explain to them that we do, because that means there's an interest, but there's a gap in understanding. And so I want to make sure that as we solidify these diploma options, that not only do they match what people say they want in theory or spirit, but the letter of them really supports the implementation and the uptake of that for students.
Yeah, we're more than happy to share with you all of our information around the CTE course offerings, and how students are partaking there.
Well, you were next right after.
Yeah, yeah, I'll start with the thing, I mean, this is a big project, you know, this is, there's a lot of pieces to this, so I don't see it as easy, and I appreciate the thought as part of this. On a couple just like really specific questions, and then like one kind of more general thing about the graduation requirements, and I will say generally too, like, I am very concerned about implementation. From my lens as like a teacher, because some of these things like, when there is ambiguity and flexibility and there's not support, things don't get done well. And so I think that also leads to a lot of confusion. I could see a variety of these things with teachers, the LEA leaders having lots of questions. And wanting to do it right, but not knowing that there's multiple ways to doing it right. And, I guess to say that, like, I'm committed to working with you to like concretize this, in ways that I think could actually get to a lot of important practical elements too. In terms of the touch points, so I guess to start there with the practical piece, like, there's 3 touch points, like. Schools are organized, particularly the high school level, differently. So we already have concerns with staff capacity, and we're now asking for 3 touch points, like, is this something just that college counselors are leading? Is this teachers, because teachers are gonna view this as an additional thing on their plate. They're also gonna expect what resources are there to help. They're also gonna, some schools have advisories, some schools don't. So I'm just kind of thinking like, what does it really look like to have that done well at practical level? And is the touch point then for every student, or? I'll stop there for a second.
Sure. So you put your finger on something that is very real, and that is that our schools are all organized differently. So to be too directive won't work, because one size will never fit all. Some schools, as you indicated, have an advisory period, right? And so that advisory period, that advisor could be used as the touch point for one's post-secondary plan. Some schools don't have an advisor, but they have, I mean, I've heard of schools that have a course post-secondary. This is what you do every year to get ready for the next year. So maybe in that particular interaction with students, maybe that's it. Some schools, it's not a course, but they have a group of, like, one advisor for a group of students, and that advisor is supposed to stay connected to those 5 students all the time, and maybe it's that advisor. Many schools, particularly DCPS schools, have counselors, and so it would be the counselor that does this work. The point though is that as we did our public engagement, people felt like having a conversation with a student about his or her future, 3 times a year. Over the course, 3 times over the course of a high school career was not too much to ask the school to figure out.
Yeah, no, and I do think it comes down to what we're talking about often, or what does it look like? When the rubber meets the road, because any given adult can have their own idea of what career preparation looks like. And I think it's also incumbent on us
Yeah.
in supporting you to give
Yeah.
real high quality resources to guide those
Absolutely.
conversations,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So the other thing, and this is just also simple, but in some ways complex, I guess, like, who's teaching the career preparation?
I would imagine it is a CTE teacher of some sort. But again, because schools are so differently constructed, it could be somebody else. This is a course that we would have to develop over time, with some initial guidance. But in my mind right now, it's CTE led.
Gotcha.
And I just don't think we, again, want to be overly prescriptive, just like with financial literacy, right? You can have a math teacher potentially hop in there, you can have a dedicated financial literacy teacher, there are different options. And so from the state level, at least, I think we would be cautious about being too prescriptive on who would have to.
I get that. I just want a qualified person. Like, I've seen too many situations in which kids are sitting in the cafeteria and nothing's happening. Or kids are sitting in an advisory classroom and everyone's on their phone, or like, and church schools already don't need to have guaranteed certified teachers, so if this just becomes a, whoever does it, then it also could be that no one qualified does it, and while it's a great idea, if the implementation isn't done well, it's gonna hurt our kids by making them spend their time this way rather than help, so that's where I think, again, like in theory, the ideas are great, but like the implementation is really gonna determine how we actually have accountability with this too. And then two final things, sorry, so one, I'm curious about what level of substitution we have with different, I heard substitution with the social studies or the social sciences. There's something with computer science that I bucketed somewhere.
Do you mean within the practical studies diploma? Or
I
general?
don't know, I guess I was just confused generally, but
We do talk about it with the practical studies, computer science, calculus, and scores.
okay, thank you. And then just to clarify too, with the different options with the practical studies and then the standard diploma. Are only students with an identified IEP given the option of the practical studies diploma? So that so it's not only for struggling students, it's just a tiered system in which we're only offering it to students with an IEP.
That's correct.
Dr. Bolton, what do you think?
Yes, I'm gonna stay with the line of questioning that Vice President has, but I do want to start with saying thank you for this great work. Like this is really some good thorough work and a heavy lift, I'm sure. I also want to compliment the career preparation class, although it's been noted that we don't know about the implementation. I like that. And also want to say that I appreciate the reduction in the community service hours and
Oh, yeah.
also the opportunity to have a paid internship. For many students, volunteering is a luxury that not everyone can afford. So I appreciate that in terms of that equity lens. I hear you all when you say that you don't want to be too prescriptive, but I think that we have a diamond in the rough here with the capstone project. And I think often we do not use our rich landscape here in DC to elevate students' learning.
Yes.
And with that said, I would highly recommend that we give some more guidelines to what this capstone can look like. Because if a student is working on this, not only is it beneficial in their learning and for their grades and for meeting our requirements, but if we leverage this right, this will help with employment and this will help with access and admission to college. So I think it's a wonderful idea. I would love to assist if need on how we implement this, but we have, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have 7 universities right here. We have industry leaders, 8, thank you. We have industry leaders. And when our students are giving these capstone presentations, because I'm presuming there's a presentation at the end, there should be some other people at the table. Because again, there's so much fruit on this that we can pick from, because now we're giving other people the opportunity to come in and to see what our students are doing. And too often our schools work in silos. So I think this is a great opportunity that will be rich for our students, that will be rich for our schools, that will be rich for the city. And I think we need to really leverage it well.
And thank you so much for that. You will see that in the report, we have identified areas where we think additional guidance is necessary, and clearly at the capstone and for the course, we've identified that as an area. I'm so excited about the possibility of having these working groups that are tackling these areas of this proposal in ways that would bring effort and expertise from a wide range of people.
Thank you.
Thank you. Real quick, I think when I asked my question, I think what I was really trying to teach is what I don't know is whatever way that person gets to there, that person does not get information that is supposed to be. All right. That LEA graduation for whatever the phone that they receive. Our system.
Yeah.
And they really didn't get all that need. That's what I was trying. I was trying to ask a question and hold LEAs accountable, like. How does OSI hold LEAs accountable? And ensure that whatever path that they, that child graduates, that they have really, solve one that basically, making sure a child is proficient in that particular way. So that's my problem. I really would hate for children, I can speak for myself. Get to college and you go, okay, this is different. They're talking over my head. There's something that I missed this one, or I graduated, but there's something that I missed. I got good grades,
Yeah,
but apparently their school did something that my school didn't do, even though we got the same problem.
yeah.
We might even came from the same district.
Mhm.
It's more of an accountability question is what I was trying to give you, like I said, there are some that I trust and some that I don't. Yeah, that's why I was getting, because I just don't want to see students graduating from whichever way they get from. And not having to see actually what they were supposed to. That's really what I'm trying to say.
Great. Yes, I appreciate that, and I think you are very well versed with our accountability system. And, in that system, we look at graduation rates, like how many kids are graduating, but we don't have deep insight into what that graduation rate represents, except through test scores. And we do the state assessment. But we don't have end of course exams like some states do. So, one way to get at are kids really getting what we intend them to have would be end of course exams. But in our deliberations around these graduation requirements, we decided not to go down that road. I don't think that there was a lot of appetite for that. The other piece is that we are engaged in a course collection effort. And through that course collection effort, many all LEAs are submitting a lot of information to OSI around the courses that they are offering. We've got more information about curricula being used. This is not a part of our accountability system, but it is giving us some vision into what's actually happening.
That's a robust special education specific oversight and monitoring process, which they can talk to you about for days.
So as everyone knows, I'm a big proponent. So what I'm hearing is that we can actually graduate students who do not perform at a great rate. And they can get any one of these diplomas, take math, take that. And if the LEA says so, they can graduate.
Our diploma is based on course grades, and LEAs do have,
Now, efficiency is course credits.
yes.
I just want to get this. Okay, good.
I think that's a big challenge too, right? And I've seen it as a 12th grade teacher, like many years where we're graduating kids who aren't able to do that level of work. Have we ever, I know in other states like New York, or there's Regents tests, or like in some states they have like socialist tests, like have we considered, and I'm really, even as a teacher, don't want to advocate for more testing. It required me to say that, but like, I'm just wondering too, like, how do we make sure that, like, there is a lot of value in competency-based things, just to know that there's, so. Like, if we want our students to be competent at a particular level, we have to align the assessment with their competency. Like, and a grade is not a competency. So I'm just curious if OSI is considering other things that could have a true value of like, you can do this, that, whether it's civics, whether it's math, whatever it may be, but just in some ways to add some legitimacy and credibility to what students know.
Well, we do have a waiver process, the current graduating requirements, which we opted not to change. That gives LEAs who are interested in competency-based education the authority to move forward with that. There are many, many benefits to competency-based education, but as I'm sure you well know, it is a very heavy lift to be able to make inferences about complete knowledge based on performance. And so it takes real commitment for an LEA to take that step. in terms of the testing, the testing for, like end of course exams or, maybe linking our state exam to passing from one grade to the next grade or things like that. We did consider it, but didn't feel that there was sufficient, championing of that approach.
And we also have the advanced coursework endorsement option, which does have external validation through IB or thing and another thing. And then finally, we think that so much of what makes a course work or not work really comes down to the teachers, and we have amazing teachers in DC that we are doing a ton of different supports with. That we can talk to you for days about the literacy advancements that we've made. We're coming out with that task force report here just shortly. So as we continue to build out those supports for our teachers, I think that's where we help to really move the ball and ensure that we have really high quality programming across the district.
So there's a question from us. Yes, ma'am. Right there.
There are many things that I definitely agree with in here, and I'm grateful that you guys looked over the graduation requirements. I'm grateful for the reduction in community service hours. I will say that. I think they were a little bit excessive for some situations. And this is coming from someone with nearly 200, so I know how it is. I like the 100 to 60. I worry that, so originally, the purpose of the community service was intended to provide a societal benefit. I worry that when we move to the possibility of fully paid community engagement, I worry that we lose societal benefit. So I'd like to know a little bit more of like the rationale behind that. I understand I really want more career and technical education opportunities. I like the internship and apprenticeship option. I want to know if it is possible for a student to do all of their community engagement hours through paid work. And when that happens, what's the rationale behind how that is community engagement? I just want to know more.
Sure. So I can envision a student who is working at maybe a place that distributes food. That to me is a community benefit. Maybe the student is doing work in Rock Creek Park with the rangers. That is environmental benefit. Maybe the student is working, doing voter registration. All of these things that a student can receive a stipend or some payment for still have value to the civic responsibilities that we all have, and to that student interacting with the community, learning about other people in ways that can be beneficial. So I think that this is another area where we think guidance is necessary to help schools make decisions about which paid experiences are worthy of the credits of the 60 hours.
And we have in the proposed new definition, some of the key points that reflect exactly what you're getting at. So we introduced here that the engagement activities will consist of civic duty related activities, as well as helping shape the environment or community in a positive setting. So we didn't want to use that integral within the revised proposed definition. So that's a great question.
Thank you. I was just curious as to how Aussie would define that. I know my last question.
So my question is also regarding community service hours. Some schools, specifically Banneker, requires 270 community service hours, far beyond 100 that the DCPS graduation requirement. And if schools can choose to go that far beyond or like not meet the standard, what's expected to incentivize schools to now follow?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but let me just say something, and then if I don't hit the mark, you can answer it.
Okay.
So, that a school chooses to go beyond the, requirement, is a part of the system that we have in DC called choice, right? And as students are making decisions about which schools to attend. They certainly should look at all of the requirements and whether or not they're willing to meet the additional requirements that a school might have in order to attend that school. So if schools want to go beyond what we have set as the requirement, I don't have a problem with that, because I think we have enough choice in the city for kids to make decisions about what they want to do.
Okay, yes, that answers my question. Thank you.
Are there other
Yes.
questions before I hear?
Hi, I wanted to first thank you for the thoroughness of this framework. I think there's a lot of good things in here that I agree with. I wanted some like clarification over the individualized endorsement option specifically. First off, is like, would it be up to like LEAs individually to determine said requirements for a student to receive this endorsement?
That is a question that I had not contemplated before. Certainly we would we have set the requirement in terms of, the fact that it has to be a connected series of courses, you have to have a particular GPA. But whether or not an LEA can, impose what that looks like, is something that we have not yet thought about. And it's a good question, and as the state board does its work, maybe you could take that.
Thank you. I have some more questions along this line. Secondly, would students, one, have, like, be able to know that this is an option for them, like, starting like their freshman year of high school, or like even before that, if they wanted to like have something that is connected in that way?
Absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
and, following that, would a student be able to have like, would you recommend like a teacher or some sort of advisor within the school itself to like help them like pursue that like level?
Absolutely.
Okay,
That's
makes
the
sense.
plan.
That is, thank you.
Sounds like you might be interested, or are you a senior now?
I am a senior, but this is something that's really interesting, and I'd love to see like how like students take advantage of this opportunity.
Were there any other questions? I just want to say thank you. I know this is first and foremost, so it's something that we all feel passionate about, and we all know. Because our focus is on children and the problem is. I don't say that we all the work of every individual city here with us, because we know that's what we're always focus is. So my, you're smiling and everything, and so you were good. You guys have been done. Make that part of the Actually, and it is appropriately, we're gonna take a break.
Ask again.
Eric, are you online? I heard Alice. You know.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there we go.
Okay, got you. Have-
Yes, I've been here from the beginning here. Can you see me okay,
We
Brittany?
know, you did, I didn't hear you when we
We
came back.
appreciate you,
Right.
sir.
Yes, I'm here and you
I
can.
want to gavel us back in at 7:07. The next item on our agenda is a debrief and the next steps from our fall retreat. Members, included in your material is a document summarizing preliminary discussions we had around strategic priorities. The document outlines 3 draft strategic priorities we came up with. In bold, student safety and sports, high standards, high support graduation requirements, educator excellence. Below the priorities are a preliminary list of topics or issues we thought belong under each one. I want to emphasize that the retreat was just the first part of this iterative process and that we have embarked on to finalize our strategic priorities. Now, at this point, I would be turning to my vice president to add some comments, but he will be back now. What I will say is over the next several weeks, we will finalize our strategic priorities and put them into a state resolution to be voted on at the November public meeting. I will now turn it over to Director Butler and to the group, who will lead us through the next portion of the discussion.
Okay. Okay, so again, in this part of the presentation, what we'll be doing is, President Passenger shared about, that there's still more work needed to bring the board priorities across the finish line. Again, there is a summary of what you all did in the retreat. It is in your packet and it is online, members who are online. And then the next 3 points that will happen this evening are: 1, I will go over sort of the priority 1-pager steps, priority descriptions and what it means to measure impact. Andrew Roof will go over the set of capabilities we put together and some examples around how you all can utilize the staff's capabilities in achieving these and executing these priorities. And then there'll be some time for us then to talk about committee budgets, timelines, well, to finalize all of these things together. So the first thing. So, if you take a look at the draft, it says DC State Board of Education preliminary discussion, draft strategic priorities through end of year 2026. That is the end of the board's term. And what you see there, these are draft strategic priorities and really a summary of your discussion. What this document is not, it is not what the priorities mean. You all did not necessarily define what they mean. And so that's part of the work for the next step. And so we really want to give you guys an example of what would be helpful here. And so going forward, one of the things you all want to have to do as a group is figure out, and the staff can assist you with this. How are you going to name and define these 3 priorities? Because right now, some start with verbs, some start with adjectives, they don't really flow, some say action, some is just a description. So we're gonna have to have some discussion and some thoughts to think through what is the sort of the nomenclature on how we will refer to these priorities that are consistent, clear, and preferably action oriented. And to give you all an example of what we mean, we went through the process to find examples for you. So, using our partners who just left OSSI, our ability, right. we wanted to show this page here. So what you see, like, I think has a strategic plan, that's a couple of years, but what we wanna pull from it, these are their strategic priorities. They are all very clear, succinct, to the point, they all start with a verb, and end with a noun. Again, just a name and nomenclature, we just want you all to see that as an example one. We don't want to move you towards these are theirs, but we wanted you to sort of see what type of thing we were aiming for when we say that the board's priorities need to have a consistent naming structure. Are there any thoughts or questions about that? Or disagreements before we keep on to the second example? Is there anybody online?
Any questions? Online?
I
Alright.
don't see any of the chat.
Perfect, we'll go to the next piece. And so the next piece, examples 2 and 3 on the screen are what you see. So you have here, we took one of the priorities that OSI had. If you click on it, it takes you to this page, and underneath the priority banner, you'll see ensure, for example, this is their priority around build futures. And what that means to the public, so they needed something to share out with the public, what that means is to ensure DC learners have access to robust and sustainable pathways to fulfilling career and life by reimagining high school and providing relevant and accessible post-secondary programs. So that is how they have said, this is what this priority means. This is what the work we're going to do in this priority can be found in this general description. And so that's something, granted, this is theirs. We're hoping that you all are able to create similar general descriptions for each of the 3 priorities. So we just want to use that as an example. So that's example number 2. And example number 3 here on this page are strategic initiatives. And so one of the things you'll see that when we will get to the one pager that we're asking you all to do with, there's a one pager for each of the strategic priorities that you all have identified, is to figure out what are those strategic initiatives. We are not asking for your work plan. That is something you like, the work plan is not something we're gonna show to the public. They don't need to know that on December 9th at 8 p.m. you will release a survey. That is like, that's a work plan item and not sort of a description of the public. We just want to get a sense of what the initiatives are, so that we can create descriptions and collateral and share this information with the public on your behalf. The work plans would be the internal documents that guide the board's work and the staff supporting it. Are there any questions or feedback with those? So if you look in your documents, everyone should have a blank piece of paper. We will provide an online link to this page. And I will say, right on the document, what it currently says is vision statement. Excuse me, priority vision statement, and what that should say, because we did adjust on the first, we thought that was important. Simply the description of the priority, what the priority is. And this is going to be language that the public can understand. So when they hear educator excellence, what does that mean to the public? What does that encapsulate? What does that vision look like? Or what does that priority, what is the descriptor for what that priority will accomplish? Does that make sense to people? So that is what we're trying to be at here. And so in the links that you all will get tomorrow when Jim sends out the file document, each of the board priorities will have their own folder. And in that folder will be this one page, which you have a copy of your board materials. And there will be some instructions on there, because we want you all to think and brainstorm on this document, have everyone go in, leave comments, and start to do some of that drafting and work together. But before that can happen, we really also wanted you all to have a set of information to let you know sort of what are the capabilities and staff capabilities and capacities that you all can lean on to help you think through.
Yeah.
So that goes to Andrew.
Yeah, so good evening, you guys. I didn't realize that it was as dark out as it is right now. It's crazy that it's not even like 8 anymore and it's getting pitch black. But just kind of segueing off of what Bernice was talking about, you know, at your strategic retreat a few weeks ago, you guys were drilling down and coming up with the priorities that you like wanted to take up for the remainder of your term. And on the other side of that, the staff has kind of been thinking about you know, our role in helping support those priorities. And we kind of see us stepping in to help you guys kind of create those kind of cogent work streams for these priority areas that you guys are coming up with and that y'all will continue to refine over the coming weeks. And what we've kind of been having conversations about as a staff is developing a menu of capabilities within our agency's operational areas that you guys can deploy and focus to achieve what you're looking for with each of these priorities, where you want to be by the end of calendar year 2026. The slide that you see up here, so we've had a lot of back and a lot of conversation to come up with in each of these areas that we operate in. We have, you know, our policy and research team that head up a lot of the political and policy operational area, the strategic communications team, and our operational area, and Roma and our administrative team, Katie, and what services and capabilities they have. So we just wanted to provide you guys more or less a framework so that as you develop the work plans that you want for these priorities, you can be very intentional with the operational capabilities that you assemble to make advancement towards your goals. And as you can see here, our staff has a lot of capability to provide you guys. You know, we can convene expert panels and write opinion op-eds for you guys, and you know, purchase surveys and all kinds of things that you can kind of agglomerate into like a nice, tidy work stream. And as you guys are continuing over the next few weeks to, you know, refine out those priorities on the one pager that Bernice was referring to, staff is kind of using this as a launch pad to build out a lookbook for all of the projects and capabilities that we do have, so that you guys can reference these as you sit down and have the conversations about moving those priorities along your path. And the next slide kind of like gives you like a little.
Andrew, before you go, you all have a copy of it. We wanted you all to have hard copies of all the things. There's also.
I'm passing it around. I forgot to pass it
You do
around.
not have a copy of this. My apologies.
Yes, thank you. So as that's getting passed around, I just wanted to open it up and see if you guys had any questions about where we're at as staff in our discussions about these things. Sir, anything y'all want to talk about? No?
I'll briefly say, yeah, so students to like this, where you were at the retreat, and we developed 3 kind of key issue areas. But I think it's important to kind of attend the community meetings this upcoming month, because we're gonna be really giving us like what could make change and what does it look like to like make things better in those areas. And then in terms of like the Andrew staff, like I think I can't speak for everyone, but I would also just be open to suggestions on particular areas. I mean, you all have, you know, a robust understanding of DC government too. So to the degree to which you think a particular issue and advancing that issue lends itself to a particular format in one of these things, like I'm open for suggestions as well.
Okay. And I do want to note that the rationale behind laying it out this way, I don't know if you guys see that there are kind of like little addition marks between each of the columns that are laying out those operational areas. And we as staff just like really like wanted to convey to you guys that, you know, we do have capacities in each of these areas, but whenever you think about them and integrate them and not treat them discretely and silo them, you can really build out a fully comprehensive approach to your priorities that can help advance success towards them, especially given the time frame that we're working on. And so we're really excited to to continue developing this document out, so that you guys can reference it with all of the conversations that you guys will be having over the coming weeks. And really excited to help support you in that way.
Representative Chang, right?
Well,
I think you might have hung up.
I would just want to thank you all for the work on this. This is really fantastic, and I think really gives us a blueprint on how to take what we did at the retreat and put it into action. What are the timelines again, Bernice? I was listening.
That's the
but I
very
think
next slide.
okay, apologies. I'll wait.
Well, no, I'm sorry, it is not the very next slide, but it is the slide after the next slide.
Yeah, I mean, you can go to the next slide now. This is really just like an example. So the sheet that we just passed around is more or less like the survey of all of the capabilities that we have within our operational areas. But as I mentioned a little bit ago, we are ultimately like wanting to develop a lookbook for you guys that kind of details a little bit more about like what these capabilities look like and how you can use them and like how you can like think about them as you try and build out those comprehensive plans. You know, like you can like mix and match things, like let's host a policy focused webinar and then do a policy brief, but then we're going to have like, you know, like a social media campaign around it too. And so just helping, you know, put it all in one place. It's like a Sears Roebuck catalog. I know that's a throwback. Yeah. Just putting it all down.
And these are examples, so the goals that, you'll see the timeline. Next. It is a tight timeline, because we want to get some of this filled out by the next working session. So I know some committees may or may not be meeting in between this time. We are hoping that you all can be, if not briefly, to begin some brainstorming. Because again, what these one pages are not work plans. We're not asking you to put the dates, the times, how many, like, no, we really want you to begin to help, because it's good to have priorities, but it's also if you can share these publicly and people can understand what they are. And how they see themselves as a part of that, or how they see young people, students and teachers are part of that in reality. And so that's the purpose of the one pages, is to help for that. And also the things that you put in the one pages will help the staff with the state resolution for you all to vote on also. So what you have, and before, while the timeline is on here, I also have, I'll end with the budget piece, because I know that was a question that was asked at the retreat, and we wanted to make sure that we were responsive to board members. One, the committee draft the priority one pagers. So you all will get all the, when Jensen's on the follow-up tomorrow, all the links will be in there. For you all to go and see and begin to work on it. That is October 1st to the 15th. That we want the committee to go in and put in some other drafts and thoughts around this. October 20th through the 24th, that's, even though it seems like it's 4 days, it's 5 days. For board members to go, other board members who may not be on that committee, to go in to read, review, and edit those one pages, add your comments. These will be working documents. October 27th to the 30th, while members are at NASB, the staff led by Andrew, we'll go in and synthesize and finalize those one pagers. And then other members of the staff will be working on the state resolution. We'll be designing sort of that initial one pager that Eric talked about at the retreat, where it's like the state board's mission and vision at the top with the 3 priorities underneath. That's when we'll be doing that work, and hoping to have some final drafts ready to add to the materials that get posted on October 31st in preparation for the November working session. On November 5th, which is the working session, board members will review the final drafts. Hopefully you'll review them when Jen sends out the email on October 31st. So you'll have a few days before the meeting. And again, begin to make any final edits and all of those things, because I mean, you also have time to make edits between the working session and the public meeting. But at that point, at the November 5th meeting, the goal is that you all will vote to add the SR to the agenda for the November public meeting. So that is the initial timeline. Also, what you have in your folders, and I think we emailed to the members who are online, are a template that will also be in the folders along with the one pager, which is a budget template. And so everyone who is here has a copy of this in writing. To show you, for example, this is what we did in FY 23. You saw the committee name, they had a project, they wrote a description. Those were the 3 columns that the committee members did. The next 3 columns were done by the staff. Because you can assume that something's gonna cost one thing, and depending on how much the bids or the things come back, the Office of Contract and Procurement will tell us another thing. And so, we will have our procurement analysts go in and like just lay out the timeframes for you all, so that you get a sense of sort of timing to help build out the work plan. And also, what Roma and I will then do, we'll go back historically, so if the board has done similar projects or similar things, to say, okay, well, this is how much it cost in FY 21, 22, 2018. Obviously, the cost of what's in 2018 is not gonna be the cost of things in FY 25, FY 26, because budgets have changed, there's the financial landscape of the country has shifted. So the prices of goods and services have also shifted. But we'll be able to provide that for you. And so as you look on the back of that document, you will see a blank template again, which will be in each of the individual priority folders along with the one pagers. Where you again can put the committee name, the priority that it aligns with. So is it educator excellence? Again, we're gonna come up with better names. That's part of the process. But what is the project that you're proposing? Like, what is the thing that you want done? And what's the description of that? So that then our procurement team and our budget and operations team can go in and do the research, get the timelines and work with our procurement folks. To get numbers and execute these things as soon as possible, starting in the FY 26 fiscal year. What I have learned so far, this year, via email from, Jenny Reed, who is over in the budget office. Until whatever's happening with the budget is worked out and convert, we have to go through a waiver process. So what that means is that we need you all to complete these so that we know what to put in the waiver so that they can approve it. For us to then execute this mandate, with money that we have already been granted. And so the sooner you all, and in a rush to get this done, again, by November, is so that we can start executing, putting in POs, putting out bids, so that if there is some type of freeze that happens in the spring, these projects are already underway. So looking at, what we want to have happen between now and next December. And it may be helpful, so if something is small now, or maybe will be large next fall, knowing that that's a different budget, that's a different timeline, but we will take that all into account. We just want you all to just put it all here, and then we will hope, add the description for you to make more concrete decisions based on the historical context in the budget. From a budgetary standpoint, Rome and I have gone through, and right now, preliminary number for each of the budgets, for each of the committees is 30,000. With contingency if, again, depending on how much OG does or something has increased or decreased, depending on what you all want to do. It is our goal. We want you all to be, I don't know if that's a good term, but realistically ambitious. Not even impactful. I mean, as you think about the work that is gonna help students, families, educators in the district, what are those things that help position you all as thought leaders? What are those things that can help galvanize and inform policy? What are those things that can build partnerships and collaboration? One of the questions, for example, I asked Dr. Mitchell about on their way out, in their post-approval, one of the things that they have is build out resources for students and families. What does it look like for the state board to be a co-creator in that? That's after the graduation requirements have been approved, once you all have voted on that. So if they're gonna build out a set of resources, can we be co-creators on that? What does that process look like? And so, but that then also feeds into what the board already wants to do around high standard, high support graduation requirements. And so it's just like, how are we connecting the dots across the education ecosystem to maximize the impact and the reach of the DC state? So just looking at things like that, because we want you all to, the work you do now to live beyond this iteration of the school and to have a lasting impact on students and families. Are there any questions about the timeline, the materials? Is this too much? Do you need to staff to lean in more and for support? But we wanted to, again, make sure you all have hard copies. There are also digital copies. Again, when Jen sends out everything tomorrow, you'll have it in digital form. But yes,
But I'm curious, what committee chairs think, like, so Representative Boulay or Representative, Thompson and Dr. Henderson, if you think this is feasible, and if you could build it into like your upcoming, committee meeting, given what you already have going on in the committee, and just knowing, I don't wanna, tacitly agree to a timeline that we can't agree to.
I'll be glad to weigh in first, if that's okay with President Patterson. Well, I'm excited by this. I think this is really exactly what we need as a board. I love the idea of, having, priorities that cut across the board that we're all working on, and then having clear communication, like through a one-pager that everybody can understand what the priorities are, and we can convey that to the public. So I love this. I don't think the timeline's too aggressive. We were already working as a committee on safety as a top priority for our committee for the fall. So I'm just excited to work with our new members that we've added to the committee to get their feedback. And I'll be glad to call all of my committee members over the weekend and get their thoughts on how they want to tackle this and what their priorities are so we can get it in there. So I'm just delighted by this. It was obviously a lot of work on the part of the staff to put this together, but I really think this is exactly what we need, and it just is, I think, extremely exciting. So I'll leave it at that. But yes, I do think, to answer Representative Williams' question, I do think we can get this done.
Thank you, Representative.
and you all can also start this work where it doesn't have to be a meeting, like you can send an email to your committee to start the work.
Any other questions, comments?
This is
I was just saying, we can get it done. I mean, my mind is mostly on the graduation requirements task force, but, we can do this.
And that, for the high support, high quality, high standard, high support graduation requirements. What happens after the task force is done? To also support this work, like what are the maybe initiatives we can make after? That's also, that, and again, I just what I'm thinking about in that.
Well, I think, it is okay to speak for the both of us at this moment. I interpret that, what, Representative Henderson just said, is not that we haven't thought about outside of the task force. Because we do have a full work plan that goes beyond the task force, and we actually spent some time in our last meeting identifying, budget items. So Jen has already identified those. And so I think we're pretty well positioned to do this, but the fact that we got the requirements today, and literally, thank you to Representative Henderson for sending out the correspondence to say like folks are accepted. If he says his mind is on that, it is because we are about to launch the task force right now. And so we have that active project happening. Not that we don't have thoughts outside that.
I'm excited to see that. We'll get to it. It's gonna be great.
Is that, was that fair to say?
Yeah, that's what I meant. I'm looking at this timeline, I'm like, I'm planning a lot of task force work in that
Yes.
time.
We have a lot of work.
But we can do hard things.
We can. That's what I tell my baby. We were ready to do one thing. I will say for the SFC also, while there isn't like a dedicated priority, we all have included you in the budget. So, again, I know you already get to, something big, 95% and whatnot. If there are projects and work that you want to be working on also, so we can again. That's just for me, but.
Thank you, guys, okay. Seeing that there doesn't seem to be any more questions or comments. Next is a debrief on the September public meeting panel, which is on the topic of reimagining your math requirements. Members, you have in your material a summary document with key highlights from the panel. The members have any comments on next steps they would like to raise? Yes, sir.
I'll just say that, I felt the panel, was relevant to what we're looking at with the graduation requirements and the move, away from a hard requirement for algebra to open up to integrated math, and I have gotten to a point of feeling open to that, and that was reinforced by, the panel. The concern that I've had all along had to do with, how that change would be received by universities or other post-secondary programs. And the way that the panel answered that question and just reinforces to me the importance of the transparency to students, so that they know the implications of the choices when they're deciding, I'm gonna take an integrated math, that they know that they need to consider how that might impact them down the road. And I feel like the touch points, the career planning touch points, hopefully will be a place where that can be reinforced so that students know they need to check that out. But I thought the panel that was unfortunate that we didn't get, the full testimonies, but it also kind of gave us more time with the two who were there. And I found that.
I agree with you. I think it would have been a more enriching conversation, because I believe some of the members were anticipating playing all the panel members that are there. And personally, anticipating playing on some of the people that were just virtual. But with that being said, I really enjoyed the discussion that we did have. I appreciate your speaking for the questions. You guys asked some very good questions. I think that it affects you the most. So thank you. Any other comments?
I just wanted to say, Dr. Barnes, one of the panelists, kindly sent us 4 copies of the publication from his organization that was also cited by many of the other panelists, High School Mathematics Reimagined, Revitalized, and Relevant. So if any members would like to take a copy, we also, I think, might be using them during the task force, but I have 4 copies. So if anyone is interested, you can come get them from me.
Thank you. I think at least one of those would be our task force. That they can get on the stuff like that. Thank you. So, as a reminder, the October public meeting panel topic will focus on victim-centered protection for students and educators. We will now move to our public meeting panel discussion. As a reminder to members, the public meeting panel topic tracker is included as a weekly roundup email. That document is where members should enter their ideals. Tonight, we will discuss ideals for both November and December. Beginning with November, there are currently no topics in the tracker. Are there any suggestions?
I'm gonna go back to my list of proposed panel topics from the high school graduation requirements. We have so far talked about what graduates need today. We probably do need to revisit like rethinking graduation requirements. I think we can do that in committee. I would like to talk about the career and technical education aspects. in November. And how we have more than one way across the stage, both to help us familiarize ourselves with our current offerings, and what potential offerings could look like, especially since OSSI has raised that in the proposed endorsements. So that would be my suggestion.
Thank you. Yes, Madam Director.
I'm sorry. I have a thought, I don't know if there's a great thing that I think it's predicted on that connects back to the artistic presentation that I should ask them. Oh, my question.
Okay, go right ahead.
Because it came up during the compact 2043 coalition meeting. Is there a seal, and this may be something that's for the graduation task force also, around performing arts? Or is there a place, because we have a particular highly rated performing arts high school, that they would see them, like, is that somewhere, is that an option? Or would they also just have to fit into one of the, or just the diploma from that high school, that's the seal itself?
And I'm gonna jump on that, because I do have some in TDP, which is a program that's not one of the traditional arts at Duke Ellington. And that's a big field, you know, that makes a lot of money behind the scenes and stuff like that, and he wants to get into that. And that possibility which that you just raised comes into mind for him as he graduates, you know, from Duke Ellington. Would that be, you know, something that we can look at?
Is the question, is that something we can look at?
I just think that's something for the task force to consider. I don't know, I don't need to question you all today. That's why I said it was connected, because you said it the time.
And I'll just pick that.
I see Jim noting it.
Are there other topics that we want to explore? We only have one, so that means we only have for 1 month. We're trying to do both, 2 months, November and December.
And I will say, you don't have to have a panel. You can't, the option's always there. But if you all just can't think of anything.
Yes, ma'am.
I know we discussed at some point wanting to revisit what constitutes as bullying in chapter 25, or how chapter 25 fits within that student to student harassment.
Others? Yes, ma'am.
Within that, if that was the chosen topic, if we could have at least an expert or two specifically advocating to cyberbullying and its implications, I think that would also be good to revisit.
We have 2 thus far, and there are 3rd. Being that, I will go back to Representative Thompson, talk a little bit more, what you think proposal for that. We'll probably, the way that it's looking, we'll probably adopt both of them, but just if you want to expound any more on it.
I think that's more than what I already said, that we, you know, unless folks have questions, I think it was pretty straightforward.
Okay. With that being said, we're gonna do November. Well, also make sure that, so give you the opportunity to talk a little bit more about bullying, because we want to consider one for each month. If you would like to expound a little bit more.
Yeah, I definitely can, and I'm sure that Mark hears can as well, but, we discussed, as students that, the term bullying and the way that, adolescents harass each other has changed a lot in the past few decades, especially. And we found that the way that a lot of times school administration dealt with that was kind of wrong, because a lot of what chapter 25 considers as bullying ABCPS is kind of gray area. There's a lot of anonymity on the internet now, and there's a lot of bullying. I would say a majority of bullying for high schoolers occurs. And so we wanted to discuss student experiences with that and kind of revisit how administrators, I guess, deal with that issue, both with victims of bullying and also how they punish, online bullying itself. Because it comes in a lot of forms, and I think we need to kind of modernize the way that we look at disciplining, online.
I want to say too, I know, Dr. Fleischer and Representative Colson could speak more to this, but at least some of this will also be covered in that October panels. So I wanted to name that for everybody, just so we're not having like a double.
Appreciate it.
And just so, because what is the name of the October panel? It's very long, maybe we can say, like, maybe so people understand what it is, so if I can do it and I'm not feeling what it is.
It is Victim Centered Protection for Students and Educators.
We're always open to feedback. I just didn't hear anyone I sent out.
Well, no, and so I just think that, I don't know what that is. Like, it's like, it
Very
doesn't, yeah, it's like, it's a lot that people can read into it, it's finding a way to condense it to, so that the average person can read it and understand it.
Is that like restorative justice practices, like, greater than
That's a good question.
is it like just within schools and also like, things like the same passage?
To me, it almost takes.
But I think these are the questions.
Yeah, it is big, because it could mean so many things as far as protection for students and educators.
Or is it just about protecting them, or is it about, like, these are the questions?
So if I may, in previous discussions, we talked about how restorative justice is in place, but what happens if the student or the community that is harmed, or even the staff member that is harmed, is not in a place to receive restorative justice, or if it is an infraction that is so egregious that is beyond restorative justice, how do we come up with support for the people who have been harmed? So that's why it's called victim-centered, because oftentimes we focus on supporting or helping, assisting those who have done the harm, but we're not taking into consideration the impact and how those who have been harmed may feel. So that was the intent from conversation for this panel, to be focused on how do we support those who have been harmed, including staff members, which I really want to elevate and think is very important, because we're often focused on students, and you all are, but we don't want to lose our educators and other staff members because they feel that they aren't being supported as well.
That's really helpful.
Yeah, that's really good.
But I don't know if I got that. No, I mean, I think that is great, I have no problems with that, I just think that. I mean, I think it's great, the content is not the issue, I think the content is exactly. Yeah, it's just, I don't know if someone is coming to the meeting that will know, okay, how do I testify? To either support this or not support this, is the point to generate solutions from the panel on how to support victims? Or is the point to like evaluate like the efficacy and impact of restorative justice for victims?
It can be yes, and I think, the committee chair, Representative Boulay, can speak more to this if he's still here. But I think we're taking incremental steps to decide whether or not we want to look again at chapter 25. We've had several conversations about how the pendulum has swung too far in one direction, and how we want to get back to middle ground. So this is another panel that will lead to that. At least that's how I'm thinking about it strategically.
And the panel is to provide the board with solutions on how to support victims.
The needs and solutions, yes.
Yeah, tomorrow in my follow-up, I will reattach the description and the folks that Darren has been reaching out to. So we welcome all feedback, including on the title.
Yeah, I mean, I remember this, I think it was clear to me, I don't name things. It's not the talent that I need, but, this, what, Representative Colson described, very much echoes, what we said last time, so I didn't hear the title, I don't know what this means. I can appreciate, the feedback that, plain language is helpful, so that folks who were not, watching our working session discussions, know how, to interact and will sign up, because what I hear Representative Colson saying is that we have opportunity here to elevate not just the solutions, but better understand what the needs and challenges are. And in order for us to do that, we need folks to show up and share.
Right.
So.
And on that point, I want to elevate something that I saw, and I think it's timely for this discussion. In the news, we may have seen the story where a student, I don't know how else to say it, a student shot a member of the fire department. That was all over the news. The second part of that I thought was of interest to us is that the attorney asked if the student could be released to go back to school. And so I can say from experience, I've worked with students where it seems like it was becoming the norm for our students to come to school with monitors on their ankles. And forgive me if I'm going too far, but my point in that is I understand that we need to support those students who are in those situations, but also what is that doing to the education in the learning environment? And then when we have situations like that, are we really setting the students up with the support that they need after experiencing major situations that include them and the legal system and law enforcement to then put them back into school so quickly thereafter? So I think that all correlates with how do we support staff members, how do we support schools and educators, how do we support students when things like this are happening? And we often focus on the student right to have an education, which is true. But how else can we support the school and the educators as well? How can we look at everybody? So I think that is an example of why this conversation is needed.
I believe Representative Boulay has his hand raised.
Yeah, I definitely support what my committee colleagues are discussing here. Would it be possible to vote on this for November as a topic, but then in committee, maybe come in and get the, since everyone who's kind of debating this is on the committee, we could kind of come up with what we think the panel outline should be and then work together to with the staff to get a panel together. That would be my thoughts on it.
Isn't it the 10th?
No, well, Representative, I want to be clear, Representative Boulay, is that we have the panel for October.
Yeah, this would be for November, though. If we were going to vote on it today for November, if I misspoke, maybe I said October, but I was thinking that if we were going to vote for November, because I thought that's what Representative Chamberlain was talking about, was that we were going to use this for the November panel.
So
But
we have two options for November at the current time, so we'll vote on which one gets selected.
Okay.
And I was saying that the suggestion for November about bullying and elements of cyberbullying, some of that would be covered already in the October panel.
Right.
And then Director Butler had questions about
Right.
clarifying
So,
the October
Yeah,
panel.
bring us full circle, it was kind of like this, could this be combined into the topic that our student representatives brought up in the October meeting? It's kind of like a question.
May I make a recommendation? Is since we will, at our next working session, since we will have conducted a debrief on this panel, because it'll be after the October public meeting, then we can decide what a follow-up panel, possibly more specifically on what Representative Chamberlain raised is something, how we could design that for December, because I do recognize that there might be echoes of this, or there might be things that we are better positioned to raise as questions once we hear some of the testimony in October. I can understand why Representative Goulet is a bit confused because it does sound like we are relitigating if we're going, like, what is this about? But that is, I don't think that was the intent of the conversation. And so, if it is okay with Representative Chamberlain, I would like to suggest that we propose that topic for December.
Yeah, or change it completely based on what happens in October.
And I received that, and I appreciate that, person that talks and made that recommendation, so that's what we'll do. What I will say, is we still have to vote on in November, and currently November, what we had to get time based on recommendation is that we have CTE. So I will be asking for a vote on that. All in favor? Any nay? Okay, so we have our subject matter for November. We'll now move to December, and for December, there was one in the tracker that came from the CCLR committee. It was artificial intelligence. And we're gonna move, I believe, this one to November department as well. Yes, ma'am. Okay, and so now we have two, basically. We have artificial intelligence. I don't know if someone from from the CCLR committee wants to speak to that because it wasn't a tracker.
Did you put that in tracker? I mean, maybe.
I put it in based on the consensus.
I'll read my script to the point.
You can rescind it though.
I think that we're anticipating, elevating some resolutions. And so there might be, we need to look back at the timeline for that, but I think there was a desire to get some more information around, AI. There is also, I think, something that, members are trying to balance, because we have had, roundtables on AI, which members did not choose to attend. And, I can appreciate, the perspectives of some members, that, we have too much we're trying to do at a public panel, and certain things that need a deeper dive, but, also, if we're gonna do the deeper dive, it's only worth it if folks are paying attention to it. And so, it is possible that like this, we might wanna discuss this, I don't know completely what would be covered here. I think Representative Best, would be the ideal person to weigh in. But I'm not so sure we're positioned to vote at this point.
Yeah, we definitely talked about the possibility of doing one, so I understand, Jen, why you put it in the tracker, but I think maybe we're just not ready
It's the
yet.
timing.
Yeah, so I think it's fine to remove it from December, and then we will circle back and decide if we want to put it on for January.
We're just leaving it for consideration, and not to the vote tonight.
So with that being said,
Thank you, Jen.
I appreciate for budget for and the co-chairs of the CCLR committee. And so we're gonna take that out for consideration for December, so that when we leave at this particular point, the bullying, student harassment. I know that we'll probably do some rediscussion after October's meeting, but currently it would seem as if we'll be voting right now on that particular item for December. So,
I think we're saying we wanna leave it.
just.
But we're not prepared. Like, I think our ask is to not vote on December tonight. Especially since Representative Best is not there. I'm saying the two of our ask, is to leave it, like leave AI as a potential topic for December. To give us some time to revisit with Representative Best, because he's not here. But we may be updating our timeline. We don't know the answer to that yet. We're not. Yeah. So we're gonna leave it in the tracker for
We're
December.
gonna leave it in tracker for December, and then have not to vote for a December.
Right, because it sounds like we need to hear the October panel to see if Representative Chamberlain's ideas are adequately addressed.
And also hear
And
from.
we need to hear from Representative Best and address some of the timeline things on the AI. And so both of those could benefit from just a little more time and attention. And so I'm asking, can we create the space to consider that?
Receive that. Also see that Dr. Fleischer has his hand raised.
Yeah, just a bit of further context because Representative Chamberlain, Pinkins, Colson, you're now new members of the C committee. And so one of the things we discussed, and one of the things on this committee handout is not just panels, but following the panel, what we receive from them, then following that up with roundtables, reaching out to government. There's other things that we can do once we get that information. And so one of the things we discussed in committee, and Representative Goulet, if you want to jump in, but the committee also discussed after that panel and what we get from that, speaking with others on just follow-up questions or inviting others to, even through an email, just getting follow-up information on chapter 5, other things that what that means to change or update cyberbullying. I know the Office of Student Advocate, that was one of their recommendations as well. So there's a number of things we can do outside of having a December panel, but I don't want to speak for you, but I did want to offer that context from our committee.
I appreciate that, and also just want to note that the entire month, October is recognized as bullying awareness. So it's definitely a great time for us to do other things, beyond the panel.
All right. I appreciate the discussion around it. I received the recommendations that have been said regarding, December. And so with that being said, there's a table for this, December at a particular time, so we'll move this along in the agenda, okay? Next on the agenda are committee reports. I will call each committee in alphabetical order, and each chair or co-chair will share out, and answer any questions for members. The time we turn to our vice president, for the administrative committee.
Thank you. So people have the report in front of you, but just some highlights. All 3 of our offices are working on annual reports. We've since decided, because we have a pretty full working session in November, to not have them present the annual reports in November, but that will present at the December working session. We already had a full kind of lineup. Couple major things within the SBOE office is that we have confirmed a contractor for our hybrid public meetings, and all construction permits have been submitted, although the timeline was revised for January 2025. And then one final thing there is that we have finished the evaluation of our office leads. They're at the last stages of being voted out of committee, but members, you can expect that to be shared with you in the very near future. So we will give you the high level summaries of that. And then the final thing is that the fiscal year 2027, and the Executive Director Butler is getting us ready for that, is due the first week of November. So we're going to be kind of figuring out the agency budget letter for the beginning of November, and then putting together a budget letter, particularly for any priorities that we have after we move our priorities along. Any questions on any of those pieces?
I just want to thank everyone in the admin committee who worked on the office leads. That process, it takes some time as you go through that process. And what I'll say is that I think we came out with some good solutions that it will be shared as they're rolled out of the committee and shared with the whole of the board. And then after we're done with that, we'll, of course, give them to the office leads. Thank you, part of that. Okay. Thank you guys for that work and the discussion in the meetings that. Next, we'll go to college careers and life readiness. Representative Thompson or Representative Henderson or both.
So I guess I'm supposed to do it. Because I led the committee meeting. So, all right. Our committee report, of course, is in your drive, and there is a link to the report, and this was our first meeting, with Representative Von Munkar. So I want to thank her, for joining us. We first, began by finalizing the members of the High School Graduation Requirements Task Force. The first meeting of the task force will be October 16th. It will be virtual, and that will allow us time to vote on the proposed resolution in front of us in business. So we can confirm the members. I would like to remind folks that that is both a mixture of a competitive application process as well as appointed positions, which do include stakeholders like see. And so looking forward to kicking off that work. We did have a conversation also with, oh, I'm sorry, and I will ask you all once we do the launch and we're on our website, of course, to like share out who those numbers are and everything. One of the reasons, there are many reasons to have a task force, but also one of the reasons is for folks to be able to cultivate voices beyond service. And so it's important that people know who's on the task force, who they should be, and then start to reach out to other things. So please be on the lookout for that, members, and that is an ask. Representative Bess then shared the draft, two draft resolutions. One is on AI, establishing a collaborative on AI leadership. The other is on AI fluency in schools. We are not at a place where we have voted that out of committee yet, but we do look forward to engaging in the conversations and also figuring out the best way to engage the board around this issue. We also had our own follow-up debrief of the public meeting panel around the math. And so no need to revisit that because clearly we did our own today. And then the committee, we asked committee members to come with suggestions of schools that they know are doing good work already around the SEL, financial literacy, and social studies standards. Please, if there are other members of the board who have recommendations for schools we should visit, and that can be at any grade level, we would love to know who you all are thinking about. When I say for us to visit, of course, we are happy to open those visits up to the full board, but that is something that we are doing like the logistics around. We want to get a variety of good lists. So we did initially ask committee members for suggestions. We also want to ask you all for suggestions and look forward to beginning those visits. And then finally, I asked again members if they were signing on to the letter around federal action. And so that's noted here. Thank you to everybody who responded. And that's it. That is our committee report. Do folks have any questions for us? And or did I miss anything from members? Okay. Who's there?
Now I was gonna ask about the AI resolutions. So I don't need one of them initially worried out. Is there anything or questions from those that you all feel like need to be like willing to add to like our arguments if it possibly, but it didn't mean based on the conversations that you all had in committee?
Not that I recall. I believe we did. Yeah, not that I recall. I mean, part of what I think we had some discussion about at our last working session, maybe not in the committee meeting itself, was Representative Best concerned that this has been raised a few times. And so it, as an individual, I think it would be helpful just to know like what the appetite is and what things are, what other things are happening. That is, I don't know if that's like a, I would call it a committee request at this point. What do you think, Representative Henderson?
So we did, and thank you for getting, we got some feedback on what AI was happening at OSCE through the last leadership meeting. So at this point, I think we're satisfied that we did have some discussion about regarding one of the resolutions where we thought the work should sit, whether OSI or DME, so we were discussing that. So we may want to include that in outreach with DME, but, I see the next meeting is October 8th, so maybe we should check with Representative Best to see if he wants to include an ask to DME at that point.
Those meetings are next week.
All right. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, I may have missed it, but I saw on the committee report, the first meeting is gonna be October 16th. If that's for, when will members be notified? So that people reach out to us, we can say they either,
They,
you know, check their inbox type of thing.
they have been notified.
They have been
The
notified.
members of the task force.
The members have been notified, the applicants who were not selected have been notified. All of them,
No,
Okay.
that will happen before
it will happen very
go
soon,
to sleep. Yes.
before it goes to sleep.
Yes.
So do all the members to the board, move on the committee?
Not
Or
yet.
on the task force, excuse me.
We have asked, members. We have asked the members to confirm their participation, so once they confirm.
Oh, so that
The
we
board,
would.
the elected state board.
We have all this stuff.
Do you all?
I'm saying
I
that,
don't think there was a difference in understanding. The answer is no, we have not shared that with the board because we gave them a deadline of Wednesday, which is tomorrow, to confirm their participation. And so if they, like, let's say, 5 people, which I would hope never happens, say they don't want to do it anymore, then the membership may shift. And so, no, we have not shared with the elected members of this board who the full list of those people are, because confirmation is still happening.
and their names will go into the resolution that we have them in new business, but we're waiting to confirm before we put that in the resolution.
That's what we wanted to know.
Yeah, we understood. Yeah, I gotta give representation since the time you finish it, come on.
There seems to be any other questions, so I'm gonna move to our next one, which is our educator excellence, and there's Representative Chang.
Hello, hello.
All right.
Yes, so as we have discussed in the past, our committee's focus is on supporting first-year educators. And our next meeting is actually on October 14th. So our in-between update is that the committee members have been moving to think more about the operational priorities and needs. So we've been having conversations with groups like the Charter Alliance to learn more about what individual LEAs have been doing and their needs and questions. So we'll have more to share after our meeting on the 14th.
Okay, questions? Screen, see if there's any raised hands at all. Not seeing any, so I'm going to keep us moving. Okay. Next we have student experience and engagement, Representative Goulet.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we had a great discussion on several topics. We went through the work plan led by Dr. Fleischer, and he covered that. We discussed our student panel that's coming up, and I would just encourage everybody to join us for that. We're very excited. Dr. Fleischer, can you give the date and time of that again for me, if you could?
Yeah, it's next Wednesday, October 8th. Starting at, sorry?
Did we decide on 5 p.m. the start time?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. All right, perfect. And then we approved a resolution that Representative Best had proposed that had been referred to the Committee on Civics Week. This was something we discussed. We had some technical amendments to it, and then we advanced it out of committee by a unanimous vote. We did discuss the issue of safety and just upcoming plans for that as well. And I think that pretty much covers it, but I'm happy to take any questions that anybody has on the last committee meeting.
I do have one question. As we move out of this and after our external committee update, and we come to those resolutions, would you be able to speak to that, resolution?
I'd be happy to, yes. If that's represented best preference, I can definitely speak to it and would definitely encourage members to support moving it to the public meeting where I'm sure Representative Best will speak more about it there.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? All right, thank you. Members, are there any external committee updates or reports that you want to share?
Not sure, thank you.
Any external committee reports?
I have one. So my Nancy committee's member calls, but I did attend the Community School Advisory Committee. The Community School Advisory Committee is continuing to think about like how do we start, like essentially like our bit of our autopsy of last budget season and what we should be looking forward to in this budget season. Also, I expect they will be doing some calls for new members because that committee does have certain similar to our graduation task force committees where folks are appointed to like the state board. But there are some people that are showing up in certain organizations, so they're going to be doing some outreach to fill some of those things. They include, I believe, some LEA seats and other things, and so we may need folks' assistance if there are recommendations. But I'm going to defer to Delia Davis to give us those instructions. So that might be an actionable thing folks need help around. The other thing is a burgeoning conversation with IEL around I think SRS around metrics and how do we better communicate metrics around the success of community schools work. There, I guess within the committee itself, there are some folks who are volunteering to think about that work as there are recommendations. I look forward to sharing that with the board because I know we've had some advocacy around that. Many of us are familiar with our schools who have community schools. And it probably would benefit from additional voices to think about it. So that was shared and announced at the last meeting, that is work that cannot be there.
Any questions for Representative Thompson? I do have one statement around community school because I applaud the work that the committee and members did for the advocacy around this year. But I would say that we need to prepare ourselves to advocate for it again. We know that it's an effective program, how it touches people, communities like my own, but we need to ensure that, you know, we're fortunate that we got it in the budget this year. So we as a board, I think it behooves us to start thinking about how we want to advocate for it in this particular budget because the budgets will do nothing but get tighter. Well, I just have to state that much, so it's just a question, but I appreciate your support.
And that actually draws a thought. So if folks were on the lookout for the actual like competition this year, it did not happen because the budget was so late. And so they did do continuation awards. It also wasn't a growth in program. And so they did do continuation awards. Those prices are listed publicly, but there was not a competitive grant process through OSSI this year, just due to the timing of DC and the budget and everything else.
Thank you, Representative Thompson. In my haste to keep us moving because the hour is getting late, I skipped over a very important committee, and that is the student advisory committee. And so, go right ahead.
Okay, I'll start us off. We had a great meeting. It was very lively. We had a number of special guests. We welcomed 75 student members this year. Yes, our ombudsman introduced herself and explained the services her office provides. Our friend Isa led a hot seat icebreaker. And Sitara and I led a human bingo icebreaker, which I stole directly from Migva. Go Migva. I presented an analysis of the student advisory committee member demographics and education issue interests, and our friend Nyla presented a brief overview of the SAC. We began with a hand raise of those who are new members versus those who are veteran members, and it was about a 1-to-3 ratio, veteran to new members attending the meeting.
I can continue. We then had some friends from Aussie come and tell us about their model cell phone policy for the 26-27 school year, and we got a lot of feedback on it from SAC members, which included people wanting to have like emergency phone usage in the classroom, people not even knowing this policy was really existing before it was implemented, and that too much time was being spent redistributing phones, like opposed to collecting them at the start of the day. Then after that, we were also introduced to the education research, was it the education research collaborative, that's the C word. And we were just kind of like getting to know what they do and how they like inform us about the research process, and we are looking forward to working with them more as the year progresses. And then I told students on the vision they have for the SAC this year, and some responses included that we want to conduct research for the annual report and to use student perspectives to advance like real issue areas that matter to us.
And the next SAC meeting is Monday, October 6th, and we had a very strong start and can't wait to continue the momentum. The student representatives will be meeting on Thursday to go over more top items and what the October 6th meeting will look like. And we also received the Aussie cell phone survey, which will be completed and shared by October 15th. That concludes our report.
Appreciate that. There's a lot. But I'll first say before I start anything, but I like this preliminary report out kind of thing, and how that moved, that's really smooth. With that being said, are there questions for them? Because I know I have one question, about cell phones. Are there questions? I'll refer to one of the other members today first.
Is the survey for the cell phone something we should be sharing with constituents or with our schools, or was it just an opportunity for the student advisor to complete?
That would be highly beneficial. I know Aussie is looking for it. I did the survey myself. When you go through it, there's an option to click like I'm a parent, I'm a community member, I'm a student, etc. So it would be beneficial, and yes, we can send that out to you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. My question for you is, I know you talk about the timing that it takes to do phone collection, things like that. I know you attend school that already kind of like took phone. Did something change? That made this more laborious, so to speak, that creates more time in the morning or getting them back out in the evenings? What changed?
So actually at my school, we don't like collect phones with the policies that you keep them like in your locker, like out of sight. But I know for a lot of people who in schools where they're like collected in the mornings, like in like block boxes or in like places like in classrooms, it's eats out of your time, like when you're like leaving class to get from class to class, to like go and like retrieve your phone or like open like a locked box at the end of the day. But I think I'm not exactly sure how that sort of changed, but I definitely think since like stricter policies have been enforced at the start of this school year, that more people are feeling those effects that were pronounced in certain schools rather than other schools, and now it's kind of a little bit more uniform, I'd say. But
And I ask the same question to you now, because I know you guys have them right in front of the boxes, right in front. And they were there prior to us, institute the policy. Can you give me a little bit insight on if this has changed and what that means for you guys if you guys go through?
So our cell phone policy has remained relatively the same. I will say it has sparked a little bit of safety concerns with the lockers being at the entrance of the school. When you exit the school, there's only one exit, so everybody wants to get their phone, and it's more like it's not the best environment, and so that's something that we are looking into like improving. But I would say the cell phone policy as a whole has relatively remained the same.
Okay, I just want to kind of understand those people who are kind of using it as opposed to being implemented and kind of enforced at this particular time and not an option for a lot of different schools. So thank you, I appreciate that. Are there any other questions? All right, thank you guys so much for the work. We will now move to our new business. I would like to ask members if they have anything to add to the following list. SR 25-12, calling for the establishment of civic learning week in DC schools. SR 25-13, establishing membership of the high school graduation requirement task force. State Board testimonial at upcoming council hearings. Are there any other items besides those three?
I have two. One is a ceremonial resolution, for the late Alberta Paul. And two is,
What was the name again?
Alberta Paul.
Uh-huh.
She's a Penn Branch resident, or she was a Penn Branch resident.
Yeah.
And an update on the federalization letter, as far as I think that's been sent, shared, or if there's anything else in the.
What was after the federalization?
Just an update on it.
Okay, good update.
Has gone out.
What else do I have? All right. I believe the director, but you have one in here that's written into here. In red, but go ahead.
I could add about, the board's budget letter.
Okay, all right, so we'll proceed with the new business. And I'm coming back to you because I'm glad I got to ask you, Representative, delay on SR 25-12, calling for the establishment of Civic Learning Week in DC schools. Representative Boulay.
Yes, so Representative Best presented this resolution. The goal would be to work throughout the year with stakeholders to set up a civics week beginning the next school year. And we really kind of discussed the importance of civics. And when he presented to the committee, he really spoke passionately about this issue and how he feels like this is going to, with the community support that we have for this effort, really kind of engage students throughout the city at a really important time when civics and keeping our spirits up is at an important point in the city. So Representative Best wanted to advance this to the working session today so we could then vote on it at the public meeting. And I'm glad to take any questions on the substance of it if anybody has any, but I fully support it, and I think Representative Best will definitely speak more to it at the upcoming public meeting.
Question for Representative Boulay.
Only because my browser's having a little trouble loading. When is civics week supposed to be?
It is in March. The second of March, according to the resolution.
Other questions?
I have a question, just a comment. There's a couple groups that do robust work around like the National Civics Week. So there's a coalition in DC that also includes like the League of Women Voters and other things that have robust resources. So I mean, in terms of implementation and what we can amplify with this, like there's plenty of work that's already been created. And I know that I connected Representative Best with the head of social studies for DCPS, and he was also really supportive of this. So there's a lot of work that's already ongoing that we could sponsor and then just try to amplify.
Any other questions? Okay, will there be no further questions? I move that we put FR 25-12 on for the establishment of Civic Learning Week in DC schools on the public meeting agenda. All in favor?
Is there a second?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a second? Is there? I move. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions? It carries, yeah. All right. Next we have establishing members of our taxable regulation and department's task force, Representative Henderson.
So as we alluded to earlier, we are in the process of, we have reached out to the accepted members of offers beyond the task force and have asked them to confirm by the close of business tomorrow. If folks have not responded to email by midday tomorrow, we will follow phone calls to give them the opportunity to confirm, and then we can populate this resolution with, those names. But the idea is just to, establish, the task force, so that we can begin, noticing, meetings and begin our work.
All right, any questions? I'm gonna ask for a motion to move, S 125-15, adoption membership of the high school graduation requirement task force. It's been moved by Representative Compton, second. Seconded by Vice President Williams. All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay. All right. Next, we have, state board testimonies at upcoming, council hearings. And so basically what I've got here on my screen basically is what I gave to read. Okay.
Okay, Richard.
Okay.
So we have been in contact with the staff. And they have supplied us with a number of hearings starting mid-October through January 2026. And so this will also be sent out to you all in a follow-up email, but we want you all to start considering which of these you would like the board to provide testimony on. In October of 2025, there will be 3. There's an oversight hearing on school attendance, an oversight hearing on charter school review and renewal, and an oversight on OSSI DOT. All of those are happening in October, which is this month. Well, the month starting tomorrow. In November, oversight, beating the odds, standout schools in DC, academic achievement oversight. Then there's a bill hearing on education reports simplification. Also in November, an oversight hearing on adult workforce education. In December, there is an oversight hearing on school improvement, the School Improvement Act and community schools. There's an oversight hearing on special education specifically. So there's only 2 in December. In January, there is 1 hearing, 1 day for public witnesses and another day for government witnesses on teacher retention as an oversight. You will see those again when Jen sends out the follow-up. If there is one that you would like the board to provide testimony on, please respond in the affirmative. There'll be a question and follow-up notes ask you to do so. But you all have asked us to provide these hearings, have provided them. Please respond so the staff has adequate time to prepare.
Thank you so much. All right.
Also, if for our new members, if any of you who all would like to sign to testify at one of the, you can also sign up individually. I think there is testimony that the board's not going to get.
And I'm coming right back to you, with, the FY 27 budget letter.
Yes. We are asking that as you complete, have your committee meeting in October, in addition to thinking about obviously the priorities for, the budget items related to the board's priorities. What are your education priorities for the FY 27 budget? I suggest that you couch those priorities underneath your 3 4 priorities so that there's alignment, but that is just a suggestion. I think that's just a good blueprint to kind of like, you can get a couple things which you've already prioritized, but there may be some things that may fall outside of that, obviously. But we're gonna ask, what you want to start thinking about those, because then there will be a fuller discussion on what those things are in November working session. Which our goal is to be able to supply the letter to the mayor and her team the Friday after the December working session.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate that. I think there's a lot of questions behind that. So I'm going to move to our next, business item, which is a ceremonial resolution of Ward 7 resident Alberta Hall. Representative Thompson.
Yes, so, this all passed this weekend. It was pretty unexpected, but she is a longtime member of the Penn Branch community. Is one of the former heads of the Civic Association, and is a very long time, DDOT employee. One of the things that she's always been concerned about, is safety with regards to, Ward 7 and, communities like ours, which are not the most, walkable. But yeah, we have the greatest, number of students who are traveling the longest distances. So I would like the board to approve a ceremonial resolution for her at the upcoming public meeting to be shared with her family for when they are ready to have their services started.
Any questions? I'll really just say, I move that we put a ceremonial resolution for Ward 7 resident Albert Paul on the agenda. Is there a second?
Well, I guess I'll second it.
Yeah, there you go. And so then we probably move to the second, all in favor? Any nays? Abstentions? Thank you. Coming right back to you, Representative Thompson, update on representation letter.
Yes, that's more of a question.
Okay.
So the letters are complete and they have been sent to my inbox too.
Okay, I expect, Austin might have some communication with us relatively soon, with regards to the virtual learning policy. So it will behoove us to share with them, for they share with us.
I think we have completed all of our new business items with that update. So thank you, members, for your time and engagement tonight. Members of the public can visit SBOE.dc.gov to learn how to submit and present testimony at an upcoming public meeting. All public witnesses must submit a written copy of their testimony to our staff for the public record. Topic on our expert panel this month, as we stated earlier, is victim-centered, and it may change, victim-centered protection for our students and educators. Members voted on this topic at the August working session. Seeing no further business before the state board, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Been moved by Representative Henderson. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions? We are now adjourned.